Hi.
I tried to copy my hi guys last time. Didn't work. Hey, Kim, why are you so far? Come over here.
Maybe
She's on the other
next
side of
time.
the room.
She's in the other corner of the bar.
She doesn't want to sit with us.
Okay, fine. Let's yell at you from across the room.
Okay.
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 And
She's
yet
fine with
she
it.
can't-
Okay.
Yet she can't be
Oh,
seen
she
in
was-
the background of any of
Good with
our.
it? All right.
No.
Man, I failed so hard today. I was trying to be like Gabby, and I just didn't work. It didn't work out.
It works. You look like a paramedic.
Yeah.
Oh, I tried the hair at least.
Yeah, I mean,
Put
this
your
is...
hair back.
Gabby hair down. Shirt. No.
I got my goat shirt on.
Sure.
I'm just Stella every month.
All fucking mascots. I swear to God, they had. I love that. I love how they.
I
put
know.
that, though.
The fact that that's a bit in season 1 is like the best thing.
I love that no one knows where it came
Otis is
from.
like, why do we have a goat?
Perfect timing too, because then we have to
We
talk.
just gotta go.
Why did it go?
No one knows.
knows.
No one knows.
No.
That's the bit. Like everybody
know,
had a
I
different
know.
story.
I know. It's crazy.
Like, I love it when,
I
like,
love-
Bowden gets in on
Bowden
it,
got in
and
on it.
Casey's like,
that true?
wow, is that really how it happened? And Bowden's like, I don't know.
No.
Dude, season 1 is such a blur to me because I've been binging like crazy. Like
Yeah.
you know. 'Cause
So
then
Yeah, but all I had to
I
tell
had to
you,
rewatch because
I don't know.
she asked me, she's like, oh, quick, season 1, and I sent one word. I was like, Allie. She's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Let me point out, I have nothing against Hallie, but I
I
didn't
love Hallie.
care for
I
Hallie.
loved her.
That's just what it is. I just didn't really care for Hallie either. She didn't give
Well,
enough to care.
we didn't really get the opportunity.
Yeah,
She
it
deserved better.
sucks. Well,
Yeah, no, it felt very like all the stuff had happened and we didn't get really a view into Hallie all that much. Like, we knew what happened with her and Casey, very high level, but it wasn't very like...
It was just there already.
Well, up
Yeah.
until she left, I feel like we had a pretty good view of her. And then like all of a sudden she was just gone and they didn't really explain it except that they broke up.
I was gonna
And
say,
then a few episodes later, they're like, oh, she's gone off on like some Doctors Without Borders thing. And you're like, whoa, really? Is that where she is?
Yeah.
No one told us.
That's
Okay.
what I said too. I was like, when?
When did that happen?
And then
And then she shows back up conveniently for,
yeah, exactly right.
keeping Gabby and Casey apart reasons.
I'd have those obstacles.
I remember
Gotta
now.
have them.
I remember now. Season 1 was hard for me to get into, to be honest.
It was rough.
I love
sure.
season 1, but I watched it backwards. So that's by the time we get to season 1, I'm already
Again.
super attached.
You
to
already
Casey.
knew what was
Again.
coming.
She watched it backwards.
I
So
did. So I loved season 1, and I loved it even when rewatching it for this episode.
I love it.
I'm never
now.
gonna get over that she did that. I'm gonna go find a show to watch and I'm gonna watch it backwards.
Do it. It's
Yeah, I didn't do it backwards, but I watched season 8 like I think I saw a couple episodes of season 7, like the end of season 7. I was like, "Ooh, I really like this." So watched season 8 entire season live at NBC, and then I was like, "Oh, I should probably watch the whole show just to kind of get a sense of it." And so then I watched 1 through 6. Really.
So sort of the same thing. You knew where the characters were going.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna try it and I'm gonna come back to you guys and I'm like, I don't know what was happening.
No, I was very
Well,
confused because I had clearly with season
I think
8.
it helped. I think it helps that like I feel like in season 7 there wasn't a whole lot of backstory to explain except that Gabby left.
Mm-hmm.
If
So
I had
feel like
watched
that
season
sort
8
of helps.
Yeah.
and then I turned around, we're back to season 1, I would have been like, where the hell is Stella?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a shocker of like, I don't know many of these people.
Yeah, it was
Like,
season 1 especially was like a totally different
Oh, yeah.
firehouse. You had
Uh-huh.
Vargas and
Oh,
Hadley
That's
and
so crazy.
yeah,
Oh, Hadley.
mm-hmm.
Hadley. Oh.
Hadley.
Who started to show his true colors at the end of season 1.
That son of a bitch.
Who are we talking about? Oh,
The
Christine,
racist
come
guy.
on, man.
dude, I'm like binging. I'm getting all these seasons lost. They're all mixing together. It's crazy. I'm like, wait, what? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Swear to God, I don't know.
But no,
Well,
Hadley was the one that like, and I loved the way the firehouse reacted, by the way. Nobody made
Mhm.
any excuses. He called Peter Mills a mutt. And like immediately the whole firehouse was like, you're gone, you're out of here, bye.
Yep.
Nobody made excuses.
The looks on their faces, I was like, boy, you best run.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I was really bad, and like I said, life got a little away from me this week with work and whatnot, so I didn't get to watch the whole season fully again, but I watched the pilot. Hadley has like a dirty look on his face, like even in the pilot.
He was a little bit of an obnoxious jerk the whole time. I think.
He was arrogant the whole time, for sure.
Even in the pilot, Severide had like that, like, you know, that kind of asshole look to him, but it's also Severide. But Hadley just had like, Hadley just had like that nasty kind of like attitude.
Yeah,
like,
Severide's is more of like a smirk to the arrogance, you know, like a playfulness almost to it. Hadley's was really just like.
Well, there was like
I'm the shit.
The first time that we saw Benny was in season 1 with that, right? Where Hadley, because Hadley was goofing off on a fire scene. And Benny was like, that guy's a clown. Like, why is he on your squad?
Yeah.
Like, such big memories of this season.
I just finished. I rewatched like
I was about to say
4 days ago, maybe.
I rewatched it.
It's fresh.
Okay, never mind. That makes sense. I was like,
because if I had, first of all, I haven't watched the first season since I watched it on TV.
Yeah. Okay.
So going back, I was like, oh my god, and like all these things kind of come back to you, and then it like definitely it comes back to you when you watch it the second time, but you also notice more detail when you watch it the next time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm glad that Kim pointed out the dirty looks he gave, because I hadn't noticed that even the second time around.
Yeah. Your tweets, Sarah, especially about Hallie and Gabby, because we've established that I watched season 1 last, and I remember
my argument starter there, my fuel to the fire.
No, I watched season.
What is this?
Well, okay, so basically we were talking on Twitter. Anytime that there were several episodes, 2 or 3 of them, where Gabby was really awful to Hallie, and Hallie was nothing but nice to her. And so like it just didn't make sense as far as like within Gabby's characterization, within like the interactions between the characters, with what we know of Hallie.
I had completely forgotten it.
Yeah.
Because I love Gabby. So you don't really think about that. Like you knew from the beginning that her and Matt were gonna get together.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew that, right? Like first episode in, you knew it. And then, you know, you've got Antonio calling her out. You know that there's going to be obstacles, but the 2 of them are going to get together. So when you meet Hallie and they start off with this backstory that you don't really know, and they're on the rocks, you're like, okay, this is it. But they kept like kind of stringing us with Hallie a bit.
Yeah.
And like Logan and I were talking, and you noticed that like, no, they're not. Okay, everybody kept pointing out to me, they're not friends. Gabby didn't owe her anything. Okay, that has nothing to do with anything, okay?
No.
Here's what it came down to at that time. Gabby had a crush. And I'm talking before, was Matt wrong? Because Matt definitely started flirting with her. And like they were on the rocks again. Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely 2 to tango. And they were kind of on the rocks, so whatever. In the beginning, when they made the decision to stay together, and they were like, we're in this for real. Like he went to see her at work. And he was like, I don't want to let you go. Like, let's fix this. I'm coming home. Like, all that stuff. They're in it, okay? At that time, they are in it. Matt is not flirting with Gabby.
Nope.
They're literally in the office. And Casey's on the phone. He's dealing with Voight and the problem with Voight. He's on the phone with Hallie. He moves away from them to go have a private conversation with her. He ends with, I love you. And she rolled her eyes.
She did. And like scoffed and rolled her eyes. And it was like, why?
And I never noticed.
She did?
Yes.
Yeah. And there were times too. There was one time where Hallie came by the firehouse to see Matt. She was like jogging.
She was training for a 5K.
Yeah, and so she tells Gabby that, and Gabby's like, "Oh, I'm training for a marathon too. I ran like a
and like Hallie's excited,
and like
right?
45. Like, yeah, Hallie gets excited. She's like, "Oh,
like,
great!
Like, oh, that's awesome! Like maybe we could train together." Like,
and Gabby's totally approaching it from like this cat fight sort of like girl mentality, where it's like, I ran a mile faster than you. I'm obviously better.
Because Hallie's like, I'm training because I want to get under this time. Like I'm really shooting to get under this time. And Gabby's like, I'm already under that time. I was like, whoa. Well, calm it down there, girlfriend.
And there were a few other times like that throughout the season too, which in my mind,
that's writers
that's what I'm saying.
Following through the bullshit of pitting a woman against another woman.
It had to be men, because only men would think, how are we going to illustrate that Gabby still has feelings for Matt? Oh, let's have her be terrible to his fiance that he really loves.
Gabby was not like that. Gabby was not like that after Hallie was gone. Gabby was not like that when her and Matt were on the road to getting together, and she wasn't like that after they got together.
She wasn't like that when
that
they
was
broke
a totally
up in
different version of her.
Yeah,
and it was literally them using it for dramatic pitting women against women bullshit.
It was, in my mind, it had to be the only way they thought they could illustrate that Gabby still had feelings for Matt, which has to be a man. That has to be a man thing. Mm-hmm. It was awful. Like, why? Why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense in any way, because
it was stupid.
Hallie offered to have her walk with her through her rounds because she found out Gabby was like going to pre-med. Hallie was like super nice to her. Hallie came to her during the whole Voight thing and was like, listen, I know he listens to you. I need you to talk to Matt for me. Hallie was like the coolest with all of this. Even when Hallie came back, she was asked Matt, she's like, so did you and Gabby ever get together? And Matt's like, oh no, she's dating young Mills now. And Hallie was like, oh, that sneaky little bastard. And you're like, Hallie, you are the coolest person ever. Like, I don't understand. There was no reason for Gabby to respond negatively to her.
It was very random.
Yeah, it was weird.
Well, I mean, after watching all these shows just like straight up and knowing like when someone's leaving or someone's like, or they're trying to do like some storyline, they're starting to begin it, like they're gonna pull that shit. It just that kind of reminded me of like when Jay and Aaron were breaking up and they pulled the whole I'm married shit, and it's just like, wait, where did that come from? And then after that, it was just like not there anymore. It's a different situation, but
this wasn't like a storyline that they pulled out of nowhere. This was just like little moments that they could have done without. There was no reason for them to be there.
Well, I mean,
it's part of the story. It's part of the story of how they were getting together. So that's what I mean. Like, and with Jay and Aaron, it was part of their story of why they're breaking up. But it came out of nowhere, and it just didn't make any sense. So it was just like, okay, so now you want me to hate you for doing that.
Well, and that's the thing, though. I don't think that and this is why it doesn't make sense to me, because I don't think their intention was for us to not like Gabby or to not like Hallie. So that's what I'm saying. It still doesn't make sense why they need to have moments where Gabby is like hostile toward Hallie, because that they didn't, obviously, if they want us to want Matt and Gabby together, they don't want us to dislike Gabby, right? And they make Hallie unfailingly nice. So clearly they don't want us to dislike Hallie. So it's like these moments, the only reason that I can think they're there is to reinforce the fact that Gabby still has a crush on him, which is a terrible way to show us that Gabby still has a crush on him.
That's probably why I never really got into Dawsey until the second season. Was because
well, they were.
I would agree with that. I felt that way as well.
In season 1, when he was dealing with all his mom drama, with like, she was really great to him during all of that. And I love their friendship. Like one of my absolute favorite Dawsey moment is, and it's just the friendship thing with them when they go shopping for the door for Molly.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Always love that part. They're so sweet.
Yeah.
And they're so funny.
Yeah.
And like they're just really, really cute. And like that, I love that.
But like if they had just, they could have had a story on its own of like her and Hallie being like, cause I mean Hallie definitely thought, I feel like Hallie thought of Gabby as a friend.
Yeah, I think she did too. Or else she wouldn't have come to her when, Voight
I don't,
like
maybe Gabby didn't, maybe Gabby never saw her as a friend, but I do think Hallie definitely saw Gabby as one. And they could have had a storyline in there of like, this stuff happens with Voight and they're having a rough time and they've gone through their rough patches, and then Hallie dies. And, Gabby helps him through it, which she did. They already had all that story there.
Yeah.
They didn't have to put them against each other that way. The story was already happening and it was already there. Yeah. They knew Hallie was going to die. They knew that was going to be the end of season 1. They had to have Matt go through the paces of getting over her and moving on anyway, and then going with Gabby and having her support him this time. So why did you have to add the unnecessary?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It didn't make sense. The only purpose that it served is to remind us that Gabby had feelings for Matt. And that's a really terrible way to illustrate Gabby having feelings for Matt.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, I guess for our first time, like watching it for the first, no, I watched it twice, like because I watched like half the first season, like when it was on TV, and I just couldn't get into it. And then when I binged it again, I still didn't get that view, I guess, of Gabby, until you said it, actually. But it's,
And
I never noticed the first time I watched.
Yeah,
honestly.
and I mean, I noticed the first time I watched it, but then see, I watched the show backwards.
Mhm.
So like, but the thing is, it doesn't. As, as someone who knows that men don't know how to write women, it didn't make me not like Gabby. It was just one of those things where it's like,
It just felt very out of character. Like
It was very out of
it makes,
character
like,
for her.
you
Yeah.
get like these amazing Gabby moments where she's like this badass late woman who she has amazing friendship with everybody in the firehouse, and then just because and we're allowed to have crushes on whoever we want. You're allowed to. You're allowed to have
for sure. Having a crush doesn't. I mean, just because he was attached didn't mean she couldn't have a crush on him. She can have a crush on him.
But
no matter
also,
what.
Gabby's a woman, and she's not like some lovesick teenager. And then you get these little lovesick teenager moments, and it just felt like
it was very immature. That's exactly it. It was too immature for Gabby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was just not. They shouldn't have had Gabby do this. Was lecturing Shay.
That killed me, man.
Yeah, lecturing Shay on like having feelings for someone in a committed relationship, and I'm like,
Shay,
Gabby,
you remember?
Yeah.
So she sees her ex-girlfriend, and Gabby's like, Shay, like she's married. You can't do that, and I'm like, am I in the Twilight Zone?
Engaged. What are you talking? Yeah. That was not.
That was so weird. But her conversation with Shay was very in character for Gabby.
Yes.
Looking out for her friend Shay. It was the stuff otherwise it was like, who is this character? Like,
right. They could have approached that conversation totally differently.
So differently.
Just Gabby being concerned because of the history there.
Right. And
they could have started with that, I scooped you up off the floor after the last time you broke up, and I'm just worried. They could have just left all of that other stuff out. Just stuck with that. Yeah.
There was some confusion in the writer's room.
There really was.
I was gonna say maybe they had different writers for those episodes. And
easily could have for sure.
Yeah,
because I definitely think
men.
We should probably look into. I wonder if like the first half of season 1, if the episodes were written differently, because it was like halfway through season 1 that Gabby stopped doing that stuff.
Well, also halfway through season 1, Hallie left. And there was a different goal there after Hallie left, which was to get Matt and Gabby closer.
That's true.
And then have Hallie come back. So that's probably part of it too.
Well, anything too, it's the hardest thing is anything with like a new show, it has to find its footing. And so there's obviously going to be, throughout the entire first season, there's going to be some weird kind of like try out new stuff, see what works, what doesn't work, which, I mean,
I feel like they did that a lot more with Severide than they did with Matt.
Oh my God. Going back and rewatching Severide, I'm like, wow.
Oh, it was so painful because he's so good now. And you're like, why are you
He was a little rough.
Well, they needed that footing where it was like good versus bad. So which they stopped.
It really was. It really did feel like Christine, you're right. It really did feel like Casey was like the Boy Scout, and then Severide was the bad boy. That's really how it felt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I got into it. I was like, oh yay, two hot men pitting against each other, great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get it because of the romance. I was like, nope, it was about Casey and Severide.
Yeah.
I just want to see these two hotties punch each other.
Plus the Dawson siblings. But that's like a little thing.
I loved the Antonio and Gabby that was in season 1.
Yeah.
Me too.
Loved it.
I didn't get enough of that after the later seasons. I was like,
Antonio was like such a good teasing older brother. Like it was enough of like, you could tell there was enough sort of like judgment there where it's like, I want to lecture you, but I'm not gonna, so I'm just gonna tease you instead. Like that's a total brother move.
Yeah.
And it was like, he did that the whole time, every appearance. And it was great.
Yeah.
Or like when he saw Gabby look after Matt.
Yeah.
And he'd be looking at her and she'd turn around and he'd be like, really?
Okay.
And like I just loved it. His facial expressions were the best.
Yeah.
And we so lost that. Like I know they were setting up PD, but we so lost that, and like they didn't need to lose that as bad as they did.
Yeah.
And even when not to jump seasons, but even when Antonio started appearing in the other seasons, like
It was just different.
It was totally different.
interactions as much, and I was like, what the fuck?
Well, and even in the later seasons, it was fueled by other, like, you know, storylines on the other shows too. Like, whereas this, it was like that brother sister relationship and like him going.
He was specifically there to be her brother. Like that's in season 1, and I think that never happened again after season 1 because he was there for other reasons because of PD.
And like, I have such a disconnect with who Voight was in season 1 of Fire.
Oh my gosh!
Like granted, I'm still on the fence about him. Like every season, I go back and forth with him because that's who his character is. You know, you go back and forth. He walks that line. He crosses that line. He comes back. He protects his people. Not always the right way. Like that's one thing. But in season 1. There is no walking the line. There's no crossing the line and coming back. There's just straight up villain in there.
Oh, well, he did so many terrible things in season.
I was so confused for so long because I told Christina, so I think I told Logan this too. Is I started with PD, so I've been watching PD on TV since it started. Yeah. And so I was like, watch it, and then I started the beginning of the show. I'm like, and it like even on PD, and when it would like and like I said, I recently started like Chicago Fire on watching on network, and I was just like, and so when there would be like PD stuff would show up on Fire, it'd be like that animosity, and I'd be like, what? I don't get it. Like, what happened? And then I watched season 1 of Chicago Fire, and I got it, and I was like, oh.
It's the same with me.
Oh, that.
Because I started PD too in my binge, right? So I didn't even get into Fire, but then years years ago, I watched half of Fire, so I watched Voight already, but I didn't remember it at all. So when I was watching it for the first time, like when Fire was watching it for the first time, I was like, oh, weird.
It's so and
weird.
Like Kim said, like you're gonna have them find their footing, but like. That was a little too far.
I feel like way too far with Voight.
Went deep.
Way too far.
That was a whole other thing because they were using Fire to set the premise for PD. Yeah. It is not that difficult for you to come up with a storyline where the cops and the firemen interact.
Well, it didn't necessarily, I mean, it was like the whole thing like with Jay, how Jay got introduced when he was like, you know, dating Gabby and like the whole stuff with Molly's getting set up. Like that made sense, but like it was just the whole thing with Justin, and it got very drawn out.
Well,
very quickly.
They had Antonio, they had the brother connection with Gabby,
exactly.
had the romance connection with Gabby.
Well,
you had it. You did not need to go that hard.
Well, I think though with Antonio and Voight, they were setting up opposite sides of a coin.
Yeah,
I get that. Where they were establishing that, okay, we know Antonio is a good cop.
Like Antonio's right.
A bad cop.
He's by the book and Voight is not.
Exactly. So we knew that. And I think that's the key point of that.
But
that was why they included that. But they did.
Dude had Matt beat up in an alley. Like,
and then he was caught when he was trying to arrange for a hit on Matt. That's how he was caught.
Yeah.
So like
it's mind blowing.
It is mind-blowing. See, I'm telling you, like all 3 shows started with a bad and a good, and then they kind of just like dropped it.
Well, like Med, like that's easy to integrate, right? Like firemen going to the hospital, cops going to the hospital. Like, that should have been the easiest one ever to integrate. And they had the April and Severide growing up together, but like. You know, Chicago Fire, this is your ground layer. This is your foundation layer because you started with this one.
Yeah.
If you have people watching this live on TV from season 1, they're going to hate Voight.
Yep.
I remember them advertising PD, and I'm like, I don't want to watch that.
No.
Not unless Antonio was going to bring him down, and that's the point of it.
Well, now, and they tried to fix that in the back half of the season when after Hallie died, and they had to have Matt work with Voight and intelligence. They tried to fix that with that, and they did a little. Like, you see more of like the Voight that we know at the end of the season, even though it's still like.
I'm probably not gonna forgive. I'm not really a forgiving person. Probably not gonna forgive you for terrorizing my fiance, setting me up with drugs in my house. having
Yep.
someone beat me up in a back alley, and then attempting to order a hit on me. We're probably
Nope.
not ever going to be friends.
No.
Oh my god, I forgot that all happened.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
Boyd went a little too hard.
He went way too hard. And then
the
they
one
tried
thing-
to fix it by throwing in like a small scene with the internal investigations lady, the IA lady, like right at the end.
Yeah.
They tried to fix it with just that little
I
scene,
feel
and you're like,
I feel like
and the
they
whole-
were like, I can just picture them like getting really into it. Like, yeah, then we're going to have him do this. And then we're going to have him do this. And then them coming back and like, yeah, but like, we have to have them like each other. Oh shit, we forgot about that part. It's okay, we
Well,
can
and-
fix it.
I know our next time together we'll talk about PD like season 1, but like still, I mean, because it kind of I feel like leads into it is PD. They glossed over all of this.
Oh yeah, it never happened. What are you talking
They
about?
They never talk about it. Nobody talks about it. So me, like I said, watching PD from the start, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't love Voight because he's definitely like a darker kind of guy, but they never mention any.
I mean,
of
they
what
did
happened.
like they did
But
make
you-
like little allusions to him being in jail. Like
yeah,
that's
no, but
Yeah.
not why. he
that's
was
all
in jail.
they really do. And you're like,
Yeah.
They never.
They
talk
don't really
why.
ever discuss the terror he inflicted on
right,
Matt and Hallie.
they don't know. He's like
That's
went
exactly why I
hard.
forgot that happened.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No. I remembered I remembered him giving Matt a hard time. Definitely didn't remember how serious it got. I remembered them having the conversation in the bar
He
when Boyd
almost
first tries to convince Casey. I did not remember it getting that heated that quickly, and I was like, oh wow, this progressed a lot faster than I
Bowden
remember.
had to interrupt.
And then like the drugs, and I was like, yep, didn't remember that. And I remember him
If-
getting beat up in the alley, but like
Yeah. If Matt had been caught with those drugs, he'd have gone to jail like for a long time.
no,
a long
he would have
time.
lost his job.
Thank
Like
God for Hallie. Can we say that right now? For Hallie
saved his
finding-
ass.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
and like Matt, oh little innocent Matt, he like I don't know what to do. She's like, it's fine, I got this.
Yeah.
You go answer
Well,
the door, I'm gonna
afterward-
flush him down the toilet.
Afterward, though, when they left, Hallie panicked because she was like, "What do we do? What do we do?" And he was like, "Flush it." And she's like,
But-
"No, shouldn't you call it, Tony?" He's like, "No, flush it." And then he left
But like
and went after.
that's so like true of like so you know like my best friends and I like you have one that's super calm during the situation and they freak
Yeah.
out afterwards, and then you have the
Yeah.
other one who's like freaking out the whole time. Like I loved that. I loved that they did that. I did not love what Voight did. I was like, now I remember why I didn't want to watch PD when I first started.
Well, no, and it's still even more so confusing because it's like, I mean, I get it, the whole like point of it all for was like, was wanting to protect his son, and then on PD he was like, oh, it was good for his son to go to jail
Well,
and all that.
and he does
it's
tell
like,
Matt that at the end of the season.
yeah, it's just
He
still-
does.
it's just
He
that it was
acknowledged
straight up
After he went too hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
after he went too hard, he says he tells Matt, "Actually, that was probably good for
Actually,
you."
you know
You're
what
like,
though?
"Why
I'm
didn't
really
you realize
I'm really
that?"
sorry. I'm sorry I
Forever
planted
ago.
the drugs and had you beat up and put it on you because like you were right. He definitely should have went to jail.
Maybe we should stop
'Cause he said
questioning
he-
them. Just stop questioning. Just watch it. It's
Well,
always
I
like
mean-
the problem.
He shows up at Molly's when he says that to him and tries to talk to Matt and Hallie, and you're like, "Why did you think this was a good idea, Voight? I don't understand."
I mean, it's one thing, like, you know, just to be like, kind of, don't do this for my son. Like, I love him, I care about him, but he like tried to get him sent to jail and then almost tried to kill him. Like, that's you can't.
Like
you can't put that
I
under
would
the
have
rug.
understood. I would have understood the bribes with the TV,
Oh, I was like, what? What are you talking
and I would have understood like having the conversation at the bar, kind of trying to strong arm him
Well,
and
that's kinda
use
like
his
the kinda
position of power.
guy
That's
Voight
understandable.
was, yeah.
You are a cop and you're trying to kind of walk that line to protect your son, and you think like, oh, this guy's a firefighter, like we're in the same kind of line of work, like he gets it, I'll get
Yeah.
to him on his level, buy him a drink and it'll be fine, and realizing that it's not, but like to
And the
escalate it that far.
Well, okay, so there was the conversation at the bar, and then he bought the firehouse a TV, which Matt was like, "No,
I
no,
remember
send it
that.
back,
Oh yeah, Matt was like,
Send it
take
back.
it back.
take it back."
Bye.
And Mel
His
and everybody
like
was
deep
like, "What?"
angry voice when he gets the
What?
angry eyes, you know.
Yeah. And then he showed up at the firehouse after Casey's car was like, or the
Yep.
windows or whatever
Yep.
were busted.
Yeah.
And they caught the guy, and he hands
Yeah.
him a duffel that had money in one of the pockets. And Casey's like, "This is not my money. What are you doing?" And then after that is when it got violent, because Voight was
Yeah.
like, "If we don't get this sorted out now, you're gonna regret it later."
Mhm.
And Matt was like, "There's nothing to sort out. Like,
Poor Matt. Poor innocent Matt.
I know. I love him so
He's
much.
like, I'm just trying to do the right thing, man.
Yeah,
and he was like so
and I
bothered by
think-
the kid that was paralyzed in the
Right,
accident,
like,
and like
Matt is definitely like walks that straight and narrow line, but I do think that maybe he would have been a little more receptive to Voight if the accident hadn't resulted the way that it had.
yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Like,
I think
because,
he
I mean-
could've- he understood the thing with the son. Like he told Voight
Right.
that he's like, I'm sympathetic to your situation, but at the same time, there's a kid who
But-
will no longer walk,
Right.
and you're trying to blame it on his parents.
And like, I mean, if it had been something stupid, it still wouldn't have been right. But I can see
Right.
Matt being like, okay, like, but if I ever see him
If no one
at
else
one of
had
my
gotten
scenes
hurt,
again,
right? If no one else had gotten hurt, and they hadn't tried to blame the accident on the boy's parents,
right?
Matt probably would have left it alone. He came this close to letting it go until the dad showed up at the firehouse and was
Right.
like, they're trying to say I ran a red light. I didn't run a red light. I don't know what to do. And then Matt
And then,
was
like
like,
that,
oh, no.
you ruined someone's life. I mean,
Yeah.
you did. You ruined their life. His life was never going to be the same after that. His parents' lives were never going to be the same after that. And then
And
you
then
were also going to turn around and blame the situation on
Yep.
them when they weren't at fault for it. Like,
And that's when Matt was like, no,
mhm.
I'm putting this back in my incident report. Yeah. So if Voight hadn't done that, Matt probably would have let it go.
Well, and also, once again, who they cast to play him, like, I'm sorry, who they cast as Voight's son when the accident happened, he looked like a douchebag. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
he did.
Oh yeah, no, he was a typical Kyle, like looking.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Total.
Yeah.
Total. And then
But
obviously,
anyway, it wasn't the same actor, right?
No,
Nope, it wasn't
Jason
Josh
Segara
Segara.
played him later.
Yep.
Right.
But I don't know that at that time they ever intended to have him come back.
well,
So
yeah,
they just had this one guy.
Mhm.
But like he was like he had that arrogant look about him, and he was totally douchey.
Well,
Yeah,
and
he
I'm sorry,
looked like a douchey frat guy.
you
Yeah.
look at Josh Segara and then the guy who played Voight's son originally, like Josh Segara, he has, like, I don't know what his background is exactly, but he doesn't have like white skin. He doesn't. And like the guy who played Voight's son,
Oh
he was,
yeah,
like,
yeah. No, he's
college
oh,
frat boy.
God. Ooh, yeah, he
And so
no.
it was just like, and he looked like a frat boy who would happily do it over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember
See,
getting.
and I really liked the way that I really liked what Josh Segara brought to
Yeah.
Justin.
We
Like
can
I
get
thought that
we
was
can
really
get
well
that next
played
time.
out. But I think it's probably was a good choice not to go with the same guy from the first episode.
I got confused because in IMDb, Josh Segara was credited for that episode. So
Was
when
he
I watched
really?
it again- yeah, when I watched it again, I was like, that's not him.
No,
Well,
no, it was
somebody on
totally a different guy.
IMDb is confused.
Yeah,
Well, and I think most people can actually edit IMDb, which I don't love. Like, you
yeah.
can
If you're
make
like a
edits.
member or contributor, you can replace it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Wikipedia. You just, you
Yeah.
can't really
Yeah. No.
everything 100%,
No.
but I remember seeing it and I was like,
Definitely a good guy for the part that they intended him to be in the beginning.
Yes. Oh, yes.
it was one
Because
second.
they wanted him to
second
come
and
off
his
as this
car.
entitled, jackass.
But I don't even remember him having a big role except for just
No.
the scene.
He
So,
didn't.
Exactly. No, it was more just.
You only
Just an
saw
appearance.
him.
Yeah, you
You
saw
only
him
saw
just
him during
enough
the
to know
car
that he was
accident.
drunk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You saw him just enough to know that he was drunk, and that's
Yep.
pretty much it.
And that was it, right? Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That's all
And
I
then
remember.
everything else came from Voight. Voight would say, told Matt about his son.
Mhm.
Such a weird.
The thing is, like, the way Voight had talked about him in the first season, like, all the issues that he had and stuff, he's a cop, and he's seen so much of that. And, like, especially the intelligence unit, right? Like, they see the worst of the worst.
Well, and
What part
the
of him was
intelligence-
like, this is going to be fine. I'm going to cover it up. It's going to be fine.
Wait, didn't intelligence come about after that though?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't intelligence
But, like,
new
Voight
in
has
season
seen,
one?
Voight himself, like,
Yeah.
he's seen, the reason that he was heading that intelligence unit is because he's seen the worst of it all, like, he's
Yeah.
seen what
he was a
results
baby,
from things, he was seeing how one thing leads to another, and, like, I get that it's his kid, but what part of him was like, this is all going to be okay.
Maybe he was spending too much time in the gang unit. I mean, he was in the gang unit.
Oh, well,
So-
and didn't they talk about, like, he was undercover for, like, a super long time at one point? I feel
Well,
like they talked about,
The Antonio kept bringing up the fact that he kind of had his hands everywhere. Like,
right.
there was
He's,
nowhere
like,
that you
Antonio
could really
would say
go.
stuff like, oh, like, he went in really deep.
Yeah.
Like he was in it up to his ears.
he
Like he was in it
he has,
really,
like-
really deep.
Yeah,
Had
he
to
has like
completely ingrain
contacts
himself.
everywhere. He has
Yeah.
contacts everywhere, and he's like he's sort of all knowing.
like,
was
at
sort of like
first-
the impression that Antonio gave.
Like
Yeah.
I think Antonio came off as like, yeah, I definitely think he's dirty, but I think it's because of these experiences and going in this deep and whatever, but it's not okay and we've got to put a stop to it. And then that kind of slowly evolved.
Well, no,
And-
he did tell Gabby, because Gabby was like, "Are you being straight with Matt about this?" And he's like, "If anything."
Oh yeah, he said don't mess with him.
Yeah, but he said, "If anything, I wasn't honest enough because it's worse than what I said." So, I mean, he did say that. He said that he was sort of generous with his initial assessment of the situation, and then his assessment kept getting worse and worse until he told Matt, he's like, "If you were Gabby, I would tell you to leave it alone."
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
I should.
Voight had a pretty scary reputation.
What the hell? I don't remember any.
You don't remember
Yeah.
any of that?
No, I mean, I kind of do, but I don't. It's like one of those, like, yeah, I know.
It is funny, like what you remember, and then when you go back and watch it the second time, and you kind of ask yourself, like, this is really deep. How did I forget something this big?
With me, when I rewatched it, I forgot that so many of the big plots happened so early on, like Severide and the drugs. For some reason, I did not remember that being like episode 1. I was like,
I
in the pilot.
I think I like forgot that whole storyline.
I remember the storyline, but I think I misplaced it later in the season. But
like in the back of my mind, I knew he was taking the shots, but like I guess I forgot that it was like a huge plot. Like I don't know.
Well, he slept with a girl for painkillers.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It was so bad.
The pharmaceutical
So
route.
bad.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep.
It feels like I haven't watched the show at all.
Well,
I know. Like that. I was like, what happened?
I forgot about that.
Well, I think with the hard part with season 1 of Fire is in most shows, like you don't get a spin-off of some kind of universe until usually like a few seasons in. So then it kind of, but really, I'm sorry, half of Fire's first season felt like
PD.
lifting up PD, which is that's not really like a normal thing for a lot of shows. So it kind of got distracted by a lot of that. And I think
That's true.
this was their first time having like at least I know Dick Wolf had handled, obviously like the Law and Orders. But this is a big ensemble cast.
Yeah.
And they were kind of really figuring out how many storylines could they really work. And personally, because once again, I kind of just read the wikis of everything again, just to kind of refresh myself. A lot of it was focused on Matt. Like a lot of it was focused on
Well,
Matt.
because of Voight.
Yeah. And so it's understandable where like Severide stuff is where big stuff happens to him, but it's still kind of like a minor part.
It just felt,
Yeah. And obviously as seasons go on, they figured out really like the tone, like the right tone, and kind of like figuring out how much time to figure out per character. But it really felt like season 1 was a large part, not totally, but a large part of it was focusing on what was going on with Matt for a while.
It really felt their two storylines felt completely disconnected, which they don't really do anymore. There's always a way to connect Severide and Matt at some point. But in season 1, it really was like Severide's story was totally separate.
It was a V. It wasn't
from Matt's storyline, except for the episodes that were about Darden.
Yeah.
Right.
And there were a few of those. Most of the time, though, their storylines were just completely separate.
When I watched that, I was like, oh my God, like, how did I forget that Darden was such a huge source of that animosity between them in season 1?
Well, and Heather later.
Yeah.
Which I felt so bad for Matt during that because he's genuinely not sleeping with Heather.
No.
And Severide's like, no, you are. And he's like, I'm not.
No.
I'm not.
So bad.
Oh. It's like, Severide, I know you're jealous that Heather won't talk to you anymore, but like, please don't take that out on Matt.
And I remember getting annoyed rewatching this with Severide sleeping with
Nikki.
Oh yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
You don't remember
Bowden's friend's daughter that came to work at the firehouse.
She was there. I don't know. She was like the secretary in the office.
She was the Connie before Connie.
She went hard. She went hard after Severide. And he kept saying, no. Like, she came to his apartment and he still said no.
He gave in.
And like, all of a sudden, he goes to Shay and he's like, she is in heat and I am not Gandhi. And I'm like, disappointment.
I think I blocked that out.
I wish I could
He did
have.
say that. He
Yeah,
did
I
say
can't
that.
block that out.
Like, and I
Like,
think
but like Shay wasn't even talking to him about that. But like that guilty conscience, he opened his mouth and the guilty
Yeah.
conscience came right
Well,
out about it.
And then later, like she comes over again later, and they go up to his room, and he basically tells her, or he talks to her about her fiance because he finds out she's engaged.
mhm.
Yeah,
then
and they
she
don't show you
leaves-
the whole conversation.
No, but she
But
leaves
she
in
comes,
tears.
she storms
and then
out.
she's gone after that. She leaves, like quits the firehouse, and apparently ran off to Europe.
Mhm.
Way to go, Severide.
Off her engagement
What?
to Europe.
My thing is, like, I know he was full of himself. I mean, he still is. I know he was really full of himself back then, and he was a total player. But I don't know why anyone would risk Bowden's wrath.
I know. Why?
Well,
And like
It was
Bowden made it
terrible.
clear, because wasn't it Otis who made the comment? It was either Otis or Joe who either looked at her or made a comment about her, and Bowden was instantly lasered on them.
Oh, I
He's
think
like,
it was Otis.
think
I
of,
think it
he's
was
like,
Otis.
think of
Feels like
her
an
like
Otis.
your sister.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Severide, you're dumb.
Yeah.
But also,
Straight up dumb.
season 1 was just Playboy Severide. Like,
Except they had Renee in that season.
well, yeah, that's I mean, like the really start
was
of the
weird,
show was like,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, they
I
fit
don't like
so
her.
much into season 1. So
I
much
never-
happened in season 1.
I never liked her. She came on and I was like, she's more trouble than Nikki.
Yeah, it was. There was. I had the
like
same
her
feeling
better
from
than
her
Nikki.
first appearance, where you're like, "What's gonna happen here? This feels real weird."
Well, I like her better than Nikki. Clearly.
Yeah, no,
True.
Well, yeah.
I didn't really mind her. I just don't like her when she comes back in later seasons. is when
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
no.
when she was pregnant.
Well, because they were
Yeah.
using her to prop.
once again, yeah. So that's not really on her. That's more the show. Once again,
Yeah.
drama for drama's sake.
Because I mean,
But you know what?
she wasn't great.
No.
But
No,
she came back like a manipulative psycho there.
Yes.
she wasn't my favorite. That's what
No.
I would say.
You know what's funny though? All
She
this
was
stuff
fun.
happened.
She was fun though for Stellar Ride. It was fun to watch as a viewer because you knew.
Wait, who?
all this stuff happened with Severide though, and there's a moment in the season where Bowden lectures Pete about in-house relationships, and I want to be like, what?
Oh yeah. Well, because he's a candidate, so I guess
Yeah.
it's just like
But still,
And
though,
also,
like,
maybe he just realized that there is no controlling Severide.
well, he even said though in that conversation, he said, "I know that Severide is now like all over Chicago," but when he basically said that. He was like, but when he was a candidate, he didn't look sideways at anybody.
Now
And
he's
you're
just
like-
cocky.
Are you sure he didn't? Did he maybe just not let you think he did? Because
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
seems very
yeah,
unlike
I would
Severide
believe-
to, like,
I would
not
believe
look
that.
at anyone.
Playing like the
No.
choir boy for Bowden while he's like
Yeah,
sneaking off with all
exactly.
the yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
first season of Fire just like proves how like how crazy everything was. Like it's a jumble of storylines put together.
Mhm.
Just
I
reminds me
almost
of
wish
that
they would have done season 1 of Fire, just Fire, and then
Mhm.
introduced PD in season 2 of Fire,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
done a
Given
season
Fire
because they
some
kind of did
time.
that with did it with Med. Like PD got the season, and Fire got the seasons to kind of themselves, and then they
Yeah.
introduced
And then Med. They
Med. Like I
started
just wish they would
introducing
have had
Med.
that extra space.
They
Yeah.
started. Yeah, they
They
started
did
laying the
Med, like, at the
groundwork
end.
for Med in season 3.
Yeah. And I kind of wish they would have given that season gap between Fire and it just seemed like a lot at one time.
It did.
Like we
yeah.
didn't have as much time to get to know Matt and Severide and all the others.
I totally forgot that I think the 2 episodes before the finale was entirely PD backdoor pilot because of Hallie.
Yep.
I totally forgot that. So I'm watching this and it's like right at the end of the season, right before the finale, and I'm like, wait, there was no real lead up to the finale because this was all about Boyd
PD. Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
PD.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hard part of you had all the stuff going on with Matt and just generally Matt, like with his mother getting
Oh,
out of
yeah.
prison.
That was
Then you
about
had
Matt and Gabby.
The Matt and Haley stuff all season. Then you had Gabby, who she was still trying to deal with being a paramedic, but maybe still wanting to potentially be more. Then her feelings for her and Matt, and then her dating Dawson, or then her dating Mills. And then you have Severide with just his issues in general, and then him being a playboy, him then dealing with the drug issues, and then you have Shay,
And the
then trying to do her
baby.
thing,
And
but
Clarice.
being her ex-girlfriend, then wanting herself to have a
Have a
baby.
baby.
And then it was just like dips, and then even stuff with like Peter and him finding out about his dad, like, and with Benny and all that. That's so
Oh my gosh.
much to fit in one season. Like, you're not even a season down the
Yeah.
road. The first season.
It was jam packed. It was jam packed. And
Yeah.
that first.
But you know what's so funny is because the first season of Fire, there's less people as main characters than the later seasons.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they seem to balance it so well now. It's just because, you know, they I guess they weren't planning to have PD as a spinoff until later on, right? But like they focused so much on that storyline that it just felt like,
No, I feel like they were planning to launch
pilot for like half
PD
a
in the-
season, and then the rest of them was just like jumbled storylines.
Maybe they were planning on having PD in Fire. Is that what you mean?
No.
Again, no, I don't know exactly.
I think they were planning on launching PD the next season, the next television season. I think that was the plan.
Yeah.
I don't think they realized how much of the plot it was going to take up to do that, because it did take up a lot of plot for season 1.
You guys had a point about Med and Justice and how they handle that, like doing it toward the end. Like, it made more sense. Like, give them.
It just gave you that opportunity to, like, the show was its own before it was using. Like, I totally understand helping to prop a spinoff show.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was the entire, like, Chicago Fire didn't really get the chance to, like,
It's Chicago
make
Fire.
a foundation for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't really get the chance to build a foundation for themselves, much less help PD build a foundation.
Well, because they did that Voight storyline so early on in season 1,
yeah.
which I forgot it was that early in season 1. And like,
I feel like it was like season,
They're
like episode 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like,
it was, yeah. They set up Fire and then they went directly into Voight. Like, they set up, this is who these characters are, and then they were like, okay, and now here's Voight. And
it wasn't like a quick storyline where they established PD and then they kind of visited throughout the first season. It was literally the entire first season of Fire was basically about this Voight nonsense.
Well, and
and then after that ended, then it was about Matt and Hallie trying to figure out their relationship, and then that ultimately not ending well because Matt wanted kids and Hallie's like, I say I want kids because you do, but I actually sort of don't.
But, you know, like, good for her for being honest, because I always feel like that's such a deal breaker. Like, there's always like two things. Like, if one person wants to get married and the other one doesn't, at some point it's going to be a problem. And if one person wants to have kids and the other one doesn't, at some point it's going to be a major problem. Like, you need to talk about that stuff and get it out of the way, because otherwise, not to be a jerk, but you are wasting your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if she didn't want to have kids and she knew that Matt wanted to have kids, regardless of how she feels about him, she knew that it was borrowed time.
Right, and that was something they'd been struggling with from episode 1. I mean, that was the whole reason they broke up in the first place, was because he wanted to start a family and she didn't feel like she could because of where she was in her career.
Yep.
But then the second time around they had the discussion, it came down to, well, actually, I don't really want kids. At least I don't think I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then that dealt with that. And then immediately after that was Matt's mom and that plot. Yeah. Like, I mean, it was really like boom, 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 boom for Matt, like, poor guy. And then after the mom thing, that was when Hallie came back. So it was like
he was just kind of hit with one thing after the other.
Yeah.
And in between there, you definitely had him flirting with Gabby, getting closer to Gabby, and like, well, I get where the storyline with Voight was also used to start that build up because of bringing Antonio into it and all that. Like, I totally got that and understood that. And it made for a really great starting point for them. But also, how dare they, because I really fell in love with Gabby and Mills.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Don't talk.
Like, why'd you have to go and do that? Like,
I was so mad at Pete when, like, all the stuff came out about his dad and Bowden and his mom, and I was like, why are you mad at Gabby? It's literally not her business. Shay was right. Shay told her it's not your business. Like,
right. And it didn't concern her.
Right. It's somebody else's story to tell. So, like, I feel like Pete should have understood that, but he's young. And
they just wanted us to fall in love with him and then hate him.
Yeah, and so then
as they do.
And then I got mad at Gabby in the finale because Pete was like, listen, if you say that you don't have feelings for Matt, we can do this again right now. And she was like, I can't
But,
really
like,
say that.
I felt for her then though, because like you can't help how you feel.
Yeah,
And
but
she
at the
knew
same time-
she knew the struggles with Matt, and she knew everything with Hallie, and the whole situation was
But-
hard.
But Hallie had just died. Like,
Right.
she
And
had
like I
just
don't
died,
think,
and I'm like,
but I don't but
Matt's
Pete was
gonna be
He
in a
wasn't
place for a
asking her-
relationship for a while.
but Pete wasn't asking her like, if you want to go be with him, would you go be with him right now? He asked her if she had feelings, and like I give her kudos for not lying about it and starting something
True.
with because
True.
I don't know.
yes, Hallie died, but that didn't change her feelings for Matt. She's had those feelings for him since before season 1 started.
Yeah, but before they broke up though, she'd gotten to a place where she was like, no, I love Pete, and I'm gonna move
I
on
think she
from
was lying
Matt.
to herself. I think she was saying that because she thought it was the right thing to say.
No,
Ugh.
no, I actually kind of agree.
I mean,
with Logan there.
okay, I do
Ah,
think
thank you,
think she
Christine.
had. I shouldn't say she didn't have feelings for. I do think that her and Mills had something great, and she did love him. But I don't think that love for him ever diminished what she felt for Matt. And I think that when she said, "I love Pete," I don't think she was lying about that. But I also think there was a part of her that knew she might love Pete, but she did still have feelings for Matt that whole time. I think
But
she
I
was
think
just.
if you reach a point with a person where you're like, we're gonna move in together, that's like a whole other level that would supersede a crush to me.
Like, yeah, she could have a long time crush for Matt. I get that. But I mean, they're moving forward in that relationship, and we're seeing that.
They decided to move in together. I
They
mean,
decided
like
to
they
move in
had.
together. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
But if he had said to her, like if he hadn't asked her if she still had feelings for Matt and just said to her, like, can we try this again? And can we move in together? And can we take our relationship to the next step? I think she would have said yes. I just think that it was that process of him knowing, kind of one of those things where, like, you're with me and you want to be with me, but a part of you also wants to be with him. And Mills was insightful enough to see that and say, okay, I could just skip this question and move on to the next step with you, and we can continue where our relationship is going, but I need to know if you have feelings for him, because if you do, I can't personally move ahead with that. And like, honestly, like, kudos to him for doing that, and kudos to her for being honest about it.
I'm still mad.
I shit on Chicago Fire
I'm
for
still
making me
mad.
fall in love with the whole situation to begin with.
right.
I'm
You
still
started
mad.
it.
I'm mad at
You started
everybody.
it making me believe that Matt and Gabby were gonna have something, and you threw Hallie in there as a wrench, and I was like, okay, like, I like her, so it's okay, it's fine. And then you had me like her and lose her, and then in the background you've got Mills coming. I'm like, don't do it, Sarah, don't like him, don't like the two of them together. They're not gonna last. And then, like, I liked him anyway, and then I was so angry.
But they were so good together, though.
We're so cute.
Oh,
And like his little smirk when he would look at her, he just loved her. He just loved her.
he did. Like, do you remember? There's like a little moment I always remember with Shay, where like Pete does something for Gabby, and Shay's just like, marry him. Just marry him right now. And I'm like, yes, Gabby, marry him.
Yeah.
They were so cute.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I loved Peter and Gabby. And it was just
Me
like,
too.
I didn't
Well,
expect
and it,
And I,
No,
I was just like, okay, I'm gonna like Dossie because that's just what it is. Like, but it didn't lead up to that. And then they gave me Peter and Gabby, and I was like, why would you do this to me?
Exactly.
I'm trying to like Dossie, but then you're not making me like Dossie. You're making me like Gabby and Peter, and then you do this bullshit. Like, well,
Well,
I was gonna say, like, to me, it was just random. Like, it just came out of nowhere that, like, that's the reason why Peter was just gonna be like, let's be together.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it
like,
didn't,
all of a
because
sudden-
Pete had never really had those doubts before. He'd
Yeah,
never expressed those.
that
You
wasn't
could
the
see, like,
issue.
on
That's
his
why they
face
broke up.
sometimes, he was like, is there something going on between you and Matt? But he never took it further than that. It was never an insecurity that he harbored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It just came out of nowhere. It's just like I thought that wasn't the issue. The issue was the whole like my parents were involved with other people, and then all of a sudden it was the issue like, wait, I can't be with you unless you're with Matt. I'm like, what? Or unless you're in love with Matt, or you're not in love with Matt, whatever. And I'm just like, that wasn't the issue before.
Nope.
So where did that come
No,
from? It was just a leeway for them to get together, and I was just like,
Yeah.
that's horrible writing.
Yeah,
yeah, and I
Horrible
think
writing.
I agree.
Yeah, it's horrible writing. So, I mean, I get the whole, like, you're going to have a crush on Matt for a long time. That is not going to go away. But there was so much that happened in between that it just, you're going to forget that happened. And obviously, you're in that relationship. So you're just going to move forward with that. You're wanting to move in together. And then all of a sudden, that was the issue again. It's like, okay, no. That's
and it was hard for me, like, because I mean, I'm not necessarily the big. I mean, I love certain ships on Chicago now, especially on Chicago Fire. But I mean, starting out, I was still kind of very like even playing field, like just see who I like, and I really ended up liking Peter and Gabby together because it felt like Gabby actually had Gabby had always obviously had this crush on Matt for a very long time, and it was just still very one-sided. So when she finally got to be with somebody who equal playing field with feelings, it felt right, because it's like it wasn't just like, oh, I'm hiding my feelings for you because you had, like with Matt, because he had a fiance with Haley, and it was just like she could be kind of herself, and so it kind of like, oh, it's everything she had kind of been hoping with Matt for a very long time, and then it was just kind of like all these little like drama for drama's sake of like stuff that happens to Pete's father and like just all the other stuff, and it just felt like, just let them be happy. Let them be happy.
I felt so bad for Gabby when she walked in on that argument between Bowden and Benny, and I was like, oh no, Gabby, walk away, Gabby, walk away.
Walk back.
Like, you don't need to know this. Please.
That was a tough storyline.
Like, yeah, it was.
You had to be involved. And then from there,
I like that they let Bowden, like, he's kind of like the pillar of them, obviously. And like, I like how maybe he's not always super involved in the storyline, but I like that he always plays a part in every storyline, and he's always like perceived as the protector.
Yeah.
So when they show these moments of like, hey, I didn't always make the best decisions either, and that he's not perfect, like, the writers mess up a lot. And they do on every show. But like, the way Bowden has been written, and the way that character has been introduced to us a little bit at a time, and the life that he has now, and watching 8 seasons of him, that's like, he's my favorite character, I think.
Oh, I mean,
they've done such a good job with Bowden. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, season 1 established him as that, like, these are my people. I'm going to protect my people. And like, he's this big hulking man. And
like
he's
Papa Bear.
so like and he goes from like scolding them like little kids, you know, like when he tells them, this is my friend's kid, she's like your sister, you got it? And like to then turning around and being like, okay, like Matt's going to a bar with Voight and I don't trust that, I'm gonna show up. And like to see them set up Voight as this powerful, intimidating person that was intimidated by Bowden, you knew, like, okay, as the seasons go on, we're gonna find out some stuff about Bowden, and it's gonna blow our minds.
Well, I also like you said, that he's not perfect. That like he admits, you know, I've made some bad decisions.
Yeah.
But I also like that in telling that story about his bad decision, you actually see how honorable he is, because he had feelings for Pete's mom, but he backed off when he thought that Henry might be still in love with her, and he was like, well, I'm just going to back off and let them work it out and see what happens with them, and if they get back together, okay. And they got back together. So there's like this idea that like he had the potential to just take that relationship for himself, but he didn't want to do that, because that's not the right thing to do. So it also shows you his honor at the same time as telling you a mistake, which is really tricky to do, and was a really great accomplishment for them as far as telling us a bit of Bowden's backstory. I really liked that.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to go back to even that whole conversation we've had where, you know, like the light and dark with a lot of it, like with Severide and Matt. And I mean, especially like when you play Bowden against Voight, they're two very different sides to a coin, where they both had to make tough decisions, and they handled life very, very differently from one another, but it plays at a really good dynamic against one another.
Yeah.
Sure. There's so many instances where the two of them are always just like trying to help each other. But Voight would always just be like, let me know what you need me to do. Kind of like that hint, like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't even care what it is. I'm just going to do whatever it takes to help you. And then Bowden would just be like, no.
It's like the storyline. This is another season we can talk about later, but the storyline where he's accused of like sexual harassment during the whole Roger Maddox thing, where Voight is like, let me know if you need my help. And Bowden's like, no, I'm good. We'll figure it out. It's like,
keep your crazy locked up for now.
We're not going there yet.
It's true.
And like I expect characters to change and evolve. But like I just love the way that Bowden's been done. Like we're 8 seasons, like, you know, just about everything there is to know about Matt and Severide and all the others. And like Bowden, 8 seasons in, you're still finding things out about him.
Mhm.
Like the calendar sent me.
Oh yeah, the calendar.
Yeah.
Just sent me. Like
You know,
never saw that coming, never would have expected it. And like it was so silly, but such a fun storyline.
Yeah.
well, no, it's and I'll hate just because I didn't rewatch the episodes, so it's killing me. I know, like we find little things like of him and wasn't it him and Mouch? Like they love going to that one cover band, like
Later,
Oh,
in
yeah.
another season,
but
yeah.
it's little stuff like that it's just it's just you would never expect it to be Bowden, but it's just like it works and it makes
Mhm.
sense and you love him more for it.
I never really thought about that. Like it, because you just get so distracted with like the mains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just like I never really thought about how amazing Bowden is.
Mhm.
He's
Well,
great.
He's great.
It's-
No question.
I love
I'm saying,
him. No,
like,
I know. I'm just
you don't pay attention.
when you really have sit and think about it, and you think about all the moments that he's had over the years where he's so good at
Comes in
balancing,
at
like
the perfect time.
Yeah.
Every time.
yeah, and he's always so good at balancing like censure with praise.
Mhm.
So it's like even when that conversation we talked about with Pete, where I was sort of like questioning Bowden, like really. Still though, he had that measured. Like Pete gave him an attitude, and instead of going off on him, he was like, "Okay,
I get it.
Yeah.
we're gonna talk." Like he's just like
Yeah.
very controlled.
Yeah.
Like, listen,
Mhm.
this is
He's
how it is.
definitely he's very much most of the time, more of the time than the other characters, in control of his emotions.
Yeah. There's been some moments.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's normal.
Mhm.
That's human. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But for the
He
most
definitely
part,
he just has a tighter, and like I think that comes from him being, obviously he's older than the others in the house, and like it's just there are so many things that we can pick at that they've done wrong over the years, but
Yeah.
somebody has done Bowden right since
Oh, yeah.
day one.
for sure. Yeah.
That's true.
And
I'd agree with that.
it's really like a thing of beauty if you were to go back and just really pay attention to Bowden and where he is in a scene and
Yeah.
when he comes in and when he delivers that perfect one-liner or those looks that he gives. It's like it's a thing all on its own.
Everything that Bowden does is very deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Like it always has a purpose.
A greater
that pays
purpose.
off.
A greater purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's always one
And-
character in each show that they do right, and then the rest of them are just like, what?
Yeah, they're just there.
Just
Little
figuring
do
them out
you
as
know
they
that
go.
secretly Chicago Fire is all about Bowden.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well,
We've been tricking
know
you
what?
the whole time.
So I saw an interview where Derek Haas was talking about looking back at like season 1 because somebody asked him if Dossie was like always going to be a thing, and he was like, "Well, in the pilot, we sort of just threw it in there just to have something in there just between Gabby and Matt. We didn't know where it was going, but we just sort of put it there, and and then it
I love
became a
that
thing."
though.
Yeah, but and then he said this was like just last year, I think. And then he said, "So if a showrunner tells you they have a 3-season plan, they're probably lying." He had no plan.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Even just like movies with franchises, and they tell me they have a plan. No, you're not.
No, you don't.
100%.
No, you don't.
But it sounds good when you say it.
It sounds good when you
Right.
say it, but I doubt it.
What was your favorite episode of season 1?
Uh,
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it?
A coffin that small.
what?
A coffin that small. The little kid that gets caught in the trash chute
Oh.
and he dies, and they put the
That
Oh,
broke me at the end. I like
Oh.
that.
man.
Like I weep. I'm a very easy weeper. That broke me.
But it's
at
just
the end.
that episode was such a good example of like what fire
Yeah.
could be. You know, like in season 1, it's very much all over the place. But that episode is really like one of the episodes that tells you exactly what this show is. It's sad things are going to happen. People are going to
Mhm.
die. There's going to be heartbreak, but it's about this community coming together to support each other. And so that end scene where the funeral procession goes by the firehouse and they're all out there and they've got the ladders up, and it's just like it's perfect. It's Chicago Fire in an episode. If you're going to get somebody into the show, that's one of the episodes you should tell them to watch.
Mhm.
I
wish
think.
you told me that like in the beginning. I don't think I have a favorite episode, to be honest, because like I said, I had the hardest time with season 1 in general.
Mhm.
Even though I had favorites, like I had favorite moments, but I think to me, like when we start talking about season 2 is when I'll start going up a little bit more about it, because season 2 is when really like my mood changed. I was like, I'm so into the show. But when I was watching season 1, I was just like, I'm kind of just watching this just because it's part of the universe and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, we've said this over again. Like it was a lot of jumbled shit. So it was really hard for me to get into. But yeah, like I said, when season 2 starts rolling around, it'll be so different. Like so much more to say. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess if I am gonna pick a favorite episode, fire wise, let's put the PD story side a lot, like put it to the side. I guess when Mills and Gabby got together.
Oh, that was a
Because I
good
actually
one.
started getting into something of fire.
Yeah.
So, like, I just wasn't really for the drama that, like, the whole Hallie and Matt and Gabby, like, love triangle. Just wasn't really for it. Even though I knew it was just, like, the drama was there just to be there, you know? But I wasn't really into it. And then that whole, like, Peter and Gabby started, and I was just like, oh, interesting. Got a little juicy. So I guess I could pick that. I don't know.
And I mean, at least for me, I mean, once again, it's like Christine said, it was hard because a lot of it is very jumbled. And so, I mean, there's not necessarily one that like speaks to me like other seasons probably will.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this, if I remember right, like the season finale was pretty good because you kind of got to see like fire just like work together at the jail.
Yeah.
And you got to see that, and like there wasn't. I mean, there's always going to be stuff, you know, like between like Matt and Severide, like kind of butting heads. But it's like it was like everybody was just like, at least the team that was at the jail, they were working together, and it's just like I'm never going to be upset like when Cindy has the baby. Like
everybody was, because in that one they were all split up because you had Truck was inside the prison.
Yeah.
Squad was mostly outside the prison trying to cut in because the power went out and all the doors were locked. And then Otis and Mouch were trying to get the power back on. So like everybody was like split up in separate directions having to work together. Yeah, that's a very good one. And then they had the storyline inside the prison with the guard that the inmates wanted to kill. And Truck basically had to like circle the wagons around the guy. And then Cindy went into labor and like, there was a lot.
Wait, so what was the episode where Severide and Casey were having a cigar in front of the truck? Wasn't that season 1?
Yeah, that was like the very first cigar chat.
Yeah. It was like after Hallie died, right?
Was it?
I don't know if it was after she died or it was just after they started getting better with each other.
He was coping. So it was because of Hallie.
No, I think that was before. No, I think that was after he and Hallie broke up.
Yes.
That was after he and Hallie broke up because they were talking
and she left.
They were talking about the Academy dinner.
Yep.
And that he was going to take Heather to the Academy dinner, and he and Severide were talking about it. And Severide was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You know, she needs." But
I did look up the wiki and like the episode after Hallie dies, and they are like, you can't see it on my screen, but like they're having one of their cigar chats in front of one of the trucks.
That's it. If I'm gonna pick a favorite, I'll pick a favorite moment, and that would be it. Because that would I
think I must have my moment confused then.
Yeah, because it says like Severide consoles his friend Casey by offering him a cigar, and they kind of just talk a bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm remembering this now.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they had more cigar talks.
No, there was only one. There was only one in season 1.
For season 1, yeah. And then they kind of became a thing.
You guys have the right one.
Well,
I think they realized how much that really spoke to everybody, and that's when they kind of it became like a thing.
In season 1 there was only one.
That's my favorite moment for sure, because that's the reason why I got into fire to begin with, or tried it, because of Severide and Casey.
Yeah, and then what's nice about that is they did flip that moment after Shay died. With they did they flipped that.
I love
that
and
that was after Gabby said, "Well, who pulled you out after Hallie died?" And he was like, "Okay, I know what to do now." And that led to that cigar chat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a different reaction for the other seasons. Like, oh yeah.
Season one was rough, and I think that there were a lot of reasons why. But I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't good.
It's funny because to me it wasn't jumbled. It's basically the same thing, but I just call it jam packed because so much happened, and like I mean, a lot happened, but to me, I enjoyed all of it, everything that happened.
Oh, agreed.
There were some things that little moments that I would have written differently.
I would have just liked to see, like, if there had been less of, like, there were so many big plots going on that we weren't able to expand on each of those. And, like, I know that, like, every season they have a few.
Well, no, I mean, Fire has always, especially lately, has done 2 to 3 episode long plots where it's like this episode
this was
happens
like
in this
bam,
many episodes,
bam,
and this plot happens in this many episodes.
And like they had those plots, but it was like this one would go from episode 1 to episode 6, but then in episode 3 we throw in another one that would go until 7, and like they just kind of overlapped in a way that, like, I mean, I did like them, and it really helped keep my interest because season 1 was a little rough, but I would have liked to see a few more of them expanded on. Like, maybe it's just me. I felt like the Severide in the shots was a little rushed at the end. Like,
that storyline led to the surgery, which was because he fractured a vertebrae in his neck.
Right. So, and they were like, I don't even know how you're walking.
And originally, and I actually tweeted, I was like, okay, early on, Chicago Fire went way too far with these injuries, because in season 1, Severide had a fractured vertebrae that was supposedly it was going to take him like a year to recover from or something crazy.
That's
and then Renee magically found this surgery that he could recover from in 4 weeks, experimental. You know, that
just felt like it was like, let's use this whole season to lead up to it. He's in the bathroom stall.
Yeah.
You know, he's getting Shay to break the rules. He's sleeping with someone for it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to immediately wrap it up, put a nice little bow on it.
Well, right. And the solution was that Renee found that experimental surgery. And that was pretty much it. Well, and also he and Shay were on the outs when Ambo got hit.
Yeah.
That was a dramatic episode.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. That's one of like the best Ambo moments. When they're in traffic and that car comes at them and hits him, and then
that was wicked.
Yeah, so scary.
That was that one got the heart pumping a little bit.
Because they did it. That was one of those where they did it right at the end of the episode. The Ambo gets hit and then it cuts off, and you're like, wait,
no.
See, that's it's like I like it. I like the stories that they start, but when they're continuing it,
it's when they finish. Yes,
and continue and finish is when it's just like.
They either take it too far, or they don't take it far enough.
Too many stories is what it was. It's just they don't have time to do it.
And the one thing I will commend, like Chicago, like in most of Chicago universe, I give them credit in general. On most other shows, there's always a character or two I don't like, and I'm just like, fine, I'll watch the show and just suffer through what they have to go through for them. Mm-hmm. I actually love like everybody on the show, and in like. This season 1, like I started loving Leslie Shay, and like we got some like big stuff starting out with her, like the whole thing with her ex-girlfriend, then being pregnant, and then the baby, and then actually everything that happened with her, and then she's like, oh, I want a kid, and like we never actually got much follow-up.
I know.
I love Leslie so much, and
because Renee came back. Renee came back and ruined that.
Yeah, and I just
Renee
got like
the side characters. It's always the side characters that are fucking shit up.
But
and like they do that because you're not supposed to like them. They're not hanging around. But
but then, I mean, come out. I
hated anybody either.
So for season 1, Vargas was only in season 1, and I remember when I watched season 1 for the first time, I really liked him, and the way his story ended with him getting that injury and not being able to do his job anymore.
So sad.
Was, I mean, like, so sad. I mean, season 1 of Chicago Fire was dark. Like,
I forgot
Chicago Fire.
I forgot about him.
Yeah.
And then I went and did the rewatch.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I remember him. And like for a moment I was like, what happened to him? And as the episodes were going on, I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to finish this. Oh my God, I know how it ends and I don't want to see it again.
Look, I got to the episode with his injury and I forgot it was the episode with his injury, and they're up on the roof, they're like venting the roof. And I'm like, oh no, this is it. This is when it happens. I don't want to watch this anymore. It was just like this moment of like, oh no, I remember now. Oh no.
It was rough.
Don't go up there, Vargas. Don't go
if there's one thing they do well all the time, it's heart-wrenching deaths.
Well, he didn't actually die.
No,
but
I mean, I should say
heart-wrenching ending.
Heart-wrenching situations where the character then leaves.
Yeah.
He did try to kill himself, though. That was sad.
The death is a different story. Those deaths are brutal.
Yeah.
And then it really reminds me of now that like it's years later and seasons later, it reminds me of when oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? He's played by Randy Flagler. Come on.
Cap.
Yeah, Cap. When he like
Oh, the eye
fakes-
picture.
Oh, I was like, oh, don't let this be a repeat. Please don't. Like, cause it's like Cap is fun. He's like enjoyable.
Cap got hurt, and so he had to like Severide was really like showing how worried he was, which was awesome. And I think that Cap like saw how worried he was, and he really was enjoying it. So he's home, and nobody had heard from him.
Yeah.
So Severide's like, I'm gonna go over to his house right now. Like he was really worried, and he went there, and like he was kind of down and stuff. So Severide was really worried, and at the end, he went to his appointment. And he like tried to portray that like the doctor says I can't be a fireman anymore because I can't see. And like there's this moment where Severide stares him down and he goes, he's fine, let's go. Like he just knew, like the way Cap played it, he like has this moment where like for a second he's really worried. Yeah. And then he just gets this little like, you know, the Severide look on his face. He's like, he's fine, let's go. Like get to the truck. I loved it. I loved it.
But no, Kim, you're right. That episode when it aired, I was like that too. Like, no, this is not how Cap's career ends. Nope.
Because they hit you with those parallels.
The moment that Cap leaves is the moment I leave.
I love Cap.
He's been there since the beginning, so it's like, that's weird.
But like when he just gets that grin on his face and he's giving Severide a hard time.
Well, it's just like the stupid grin, like that perfect comedic relief without being like stupid. Like
right.
He still has
like it's just genuinely funny. It's genuinely funny, and you feel like in the moment, in that situation, that's how they have to cope with some of the things that they see. And like he just everything, the way he delivers the lines, the look on his face when he does it, I love him. And like the way Severide tries to act like, you know, he doesn't totally love Cap, but you know that he really does. Love it. I love their bromance.
That's like so those little character moments like that reminds me of Otis in season 1, because that's really what he was in season 1. Was he was the comic relief in a lot of episodes, and then you get to the point where toward the end of season 1 he almost transfers out. He like puts in a transfer to go to this other house because he feels like they give him more recognition.
He was really a lot rougher on Mills than I had remembered.
Yeah.
Like Christine and I had talked about it. She's like, "Man, he was kind of a dick."
He was kind of a dick.
Like
because you know, he was the candidate, and then Mills was the candidate.
And like I know that's part of what they do. Yeah. But like even the others were like, "Take it down, man!" Like,
well, like, I think it was.
He went really hard at that.
I mean,
well, it's also because Pete kind of came off as the golden child. Like everybody was immediately like, "Oh, Pete
hated
the youngest."
Whereas he hated the nickname Otis.
Pete's gonna be trained to drive the truck. Pete's gonna do this. Pete's gonna do this. And Otis is like, "I've been here longer than him."
Yeah, and I mean, I still wasn't the biggest fan of Otis in season 1 because he kind of just, I mean, like once again, love all the characters. He definitely annoyed me with some of what he was doing, but I also kind of understood it because, like, even later in the season 1, like Severide was trying to fast track Peter to squad already, and like Otis was the candidate for like several years, and he got none of that treatment.
I mean, I kind of understood that.
Did he try all that hard?
The house was also kind of rude to Otis at points, because there was, I remember one scene and specifically Otis was trying to tell a story, and they were like, "We've heard this one," and he's like, "Okay, sorry."
I'm like, that's so funny. And I'm on season 5 with my mom, so we were watching that episode where all of them transferred houses.
Otis tells all those stories that aren't his.
That was the best. That was the best.
I was like, oh, again.
Poor Otis. He just wanted to be in the real action of it all.
He tells all those stories from Squad like they're his stories, and they're like, "Wait a minute."
But you were on track.
And like they don't know whether they should call him on it or not, because my God, are they detailed?
Yeah.
He made me cry in that episode, actually.
Yeah.
I remember the way it ended. I was like,
but can we talk about how different Otis and Joe look in season 1?
Wow. Mouch too. Mouch started off season 1. He didn't have his mustache.
No. And I was like, this isn't Mouch. That's not Mouch.
It was Go look it up right now. It was so weird.
And
Yeah,
Otis's
it's
hair was like,
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Well, no, and it's just,
Like Mouch walked out, like I'm setting up to rewatch it, and
Yeah.
Mouch walks out, and I'm like, what in the
Oh
ever
my
living?
god!
and also, look, seeing Otis in season 1, you can see like how fit Yuri got, like as the show went on, like how
Yes.
much, because man,
He is jacked.
yes.
And
He
in
did
season
not
1,
start out that way.
not so much.
Oh,
Yes, look at like
Like-
baby face Mouch.
yeah.
Wow.
Well,
And like even Severide though, Severide had such like a baby face, and his hair was dark, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh god, I don't like this. Go back.
Well, look, I'm
But
gonna
even,
find
like,
I was in love with Severide season 1.
Well, and
Well, I mean, I
nobody-
was too. I just love him even more now.
yeah, but I mean, even more so, like Joe. Like we haven't talked about
Yes,
Joe at all.
I'm trying to find a picture right
Oh
now.
my!
'cause I want to.
Joe
Oh
had
yeah,
hair.
he had
And,
hair.
What?
I
that was
don't
just-
even know how to handle that.
It was just like so. I had been watching him in later seasons. I'm like, when did Joe get hair? Like I was very confused watching back. And I mean, even
The
I
only
know
one
he
who
kind
looked
of,
exactly the same was Bowden.
yeah.
Well, what's even funnier though is in season 2 when they did that flashback for Shay, they like Joe
Oh, yeah.
had to look like he did in season 1
Yep.
again, so they
So they have like,
Yeah.
yep.
gave her,
time.
like,
Well,
the hair.
And I know we've kind of gone like off like some of the storylines, but even just think back to like Joe's storyline in season 1, it was dark as
No,
fuck.
Yes.
season 1 was dark.
dark.
Like season 1, you had drugs, you had Voight,
Gang,
you had
like,
Joe
gang.
killing Flacco,
because his
you
brother was
had-
joining a gang
Oh,
and like
yeah.
all
Holy
that.
shit.
It was just,
and then
like,
Joe contemplated like hurting himself. Like there was
Yep.
self-harm. Like
so
I mean,
much.
Oh, that shit was
season 1
dark.
was dark.
It was
It
rough.
was dark.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Look at this. This is season 1. Hold on. Look at season 1 Otis. Look at him.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no.
The hair.
The hair.
Oh, the fluffy
They all
hair.
had such baby face. Like you don't realize like what 8 years does.
Mhm.
I still can't believe Mouch. Oh my
Isn't
god.
that funny?
It
I
does
like
not-
didn't know how to handle. Like
does
I
not
like
melt.
yelled at the TV. I was like, what?
And see, in the pilot, I forgot about that little plot where Mouch kept messing up.
Oh,
And Casey was like, I can't
no.
keep covering for you. And I was like,
Mm.
but it's Mouch.
Mhm.
I remember that.
Oh my god, it broke my heart. I was like, you can't talk to him that way.
I know.
I
it
need
was
to
so
rewatch.
sad.
I'm gonna leave.
I'm gonna leave.
And then also Pouch being introduced where
Oh, yeah.
like the little kid shows up to the firehouse is like, my dad's gonna drown him. You guys have to take him.
Oh yeah.
He tries to hide him in the kitchen, like
Yep.
in the little
Oh,
they
Pete.
ask him if, yeah, they ask him if he found a home and he's like, yes. And then they come back later and there's a little
Yep,
dog
sure
barking.
did.
No, didn't find a home for him.
They're such softies with animals.
Oh. I miss Pouch. I love Tuesday, but
I love
I adore
Tuesday.
Tuesday. I
That
adore
was
Tuesday.
That was such a sweet, like a bittersweet episode though when
Pouch when they gave away Pouch to the little boy. Oh,
Well,
that
one
was
thing-
so heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, okay, I'm crying now. My God.
It was rough. There were some rough times.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, and that's where it was very dark, but once again, I still I mean, once again, finding their footing, and I think, you know, just being as connected as it was to PD, it was just gonna be
I think
dark.
I blame PD for it being dark.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
well,
they
I
wanted
I-
PD to be dark. They
Well-
wanted it to be the, you know, this darker side of everything,
really
and you know, the
did.
deep intelligence unit.
Season 1 though, I think Kim's right. I think season 1 was a lot of like experimenting. Like there's
Mhm.
a possibility for Fire to be dark.
Yeah.
So they did a mix of both. They did like some dark
Yeah.
storylines and they did some more hopeful ones. And I think they were kind of just wondering which vibe would land.
well, and I think especially too, which we haven't really talked about, is like with a lot of other Dick Wolf shows, a lot of those were in New York, and obviously New York, it's not a bright and shiny place, so they definitely lean on that in those shows, and especially with Chicago too. There's some dirty stuff that
Chicago
goes on.
Dirty shit
Yeah.
in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I give credit to when they did the storyline with Joe and his brother, because there's gangs. They're
Oh
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
so
That's
it's
a bit, yeah.
And I mean, like, even like with stuff like with like I think the homeless man in the fire, it's just like it was just
Oh,
unfortunate that it's just
The
like
homeless man. Whoa.
Yeah, with Pete saying, "Let me go back in there. Let me go back in there."
yeah.
And like
And then
I
it's
got
like
where I
Bowden.
so got where Pete was coming from, but like I feel like Bowden
Bowden
there's
is
a
more,
time and a
yeah.
place to
Yeah.
question, and that's kind of what Bowden's attitude was. Like, you know, I
Well,
don't expect to never be questioned,
yeah.
but
Also,
you've just got to think,
Mhm.
well, also though,
because that
Bowden knows
situation
what it-
totally,
yeah, but Bowden
it's-
knows what it's like though to be the guy that wants to go back in,
yes.
and he knows what the motivation behind that is.
Right.
Mhm.
So, you know, and
But, you
he
know, it's his
also is
response. He's
experienced
got to
enough
keep his
to
men
know
safe.
exactly, and he's been through those experiences where he's lost people, and he doesn't want that.
And if you watch from when the moment that Pete says he was in there and wants to go back to the moment when it all goes up, he would not have had time. He wouldn't have.
No, Pete would have been dead too.
Well, and that's where
Right.
even in the pilot, like we see or maybe it's it was the pilot. It was like pretty quickly. Bowden knows his shit. Like when
Mhm.
like I think it was toward the end of the episode, like where they were in the apartment complex fire of like they can't go back down. They need to go up. And I mean it's just like and nobody else on scene had mentioned anything of the sort. I mean it's just
Oh
it's
yeah, that's
so-
when Herman and Casey fall through the
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, it's so they tell you pretty quickly. Bowden knows his shit. Like
Yeah.
he's not just your average. Like I mean, a firefighter who's done it up. He's been through it. Like,
He's been
he
through it
knows.
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they do make a point. Is it in the pilot where they show his back, the burns on his back?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
Pete
the one
sees it,
episode I was
yes.
able to
Yeah,
rewatch.
because
and
he's
it's-
changing in his closet of an
Yes.
office in the
Yeah.
pilot. Office in the pilot was so sad.
The pilot?
Mhm.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. I felt like that was like mid-season or something.
No,
That was- he's
boom,
changing
hit
his
you right
shirt.
with it.
yeah,
see
he's
what I
changing
mean?
his shirt in the
He
office.
was walking into the office and he was putting his shirt on his back, and Pete
And
kind
there's
of
like
like
a burn across his back. Yeah,
No, I remember. It's just that I just didn't remember when.
yeah,
in the
Yeah,
pilot.
right off the bat.
See, that's what I mean. Like they just throw me all this shit, and I don't even remember where it's at.
I have a very hard time for a lot of it remembering like where exactly it happened. Like I know the big stuff. Like I know
Well,
that Hallie dies
it
at
all
the end
blends.
of the season, and
Mhm.
but, like in
Yeah.
the middle, it all kind of like.
Well,
gets
like I said
convoluted.
earlier, I forgot some of those plots happened so early because they felt like such big plots that I thought, well, surely the show's gonna get its feet under it and then
Nope.
do the big plots. No, they like hit the ground
No.
running.
No.
They like,
They
okay,
were
we're gonna
not
have
messing around.
no. They were like, Severide's one of our main guys, and he's gonna have a drug problem like now. And you're like,
Yep.
wait, what? Like, and then you felt so bad. Like there was a big chunk of the season where I was like, I don't understand why Shay is friends with this guy because she kept having to get. I didn't because she kept having to like sneak drugs to him and he was not appreciative. And then when later
no,
on,
because like when she said to him like this is the last time, and he was so like he
Yeah.
knew that if he really went to
Well-
her that it wouldn't be. So he was just like,
Yeah. and then later on in the season when somebody notices that the vials were missing,
Well,
she
Bowden,
goes
I
to
think.
him.
Yeah.
No, it's somebody
Oh.
reports it to Bowden.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, yeah,
Bowden
that's
tells them they need
another
to
angle.
account for it.
Yeah.
So she goes to Severide to talk to him about it, and he's like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. And she's
right,
like,
like it's not my
"Oh, okay.
problem.
you got what you wanted. Great. So I guess that's it. You're done.
Wow.
You know, like I was just like, oh shit.
He was a real dick back
He
in
was
those
a
days.
Such
Mhm.
a dick to her.
Well, he was such a good.
But like they did have those moments though of like where you saw
Yeah, they
why
did.
their
but
friendship was shine through.
that
But like Shay is she was so outspoken and so unafraid to call anybody on their shit
Yeah.
that you were like, call him out, Shay.
in season 1 though, until you get to the accident with the Ambo though, I feel like there was more. I
It
questioned
felt like a
more why they
one-sided
were
friendship.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until
Mhm.
that happened, and then after the accident, it was like Severide was like, "Wait, I've been such a jerk. I got to fix this."
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then it was a whole different ball game after
Yeah.
that.
hmm
But I mean, up until that point where Shay almost died, I was
Mhm.
like, I know I'm gonna like this friendship because
I had
season 2?
compared them when I was talking to Christina. I was like, you know who they really reminded me of? You know, I don't know if you guys ever watched Dawson's Creek, but the way that Jen and Jack would say that they were soulmates,
Mhm.
but that people didn't really understand that when they would say that because they'd be like, well, what do you mean you're soulmates? Like Jack is gay.
Mhm.
They were soulmates in the way that like Jen would tell people like their souls were so a part of each other
Yeah,
and they were just best friends, just didn't cover
they were
what
each
they
other's
were.
person.
Mhm.
They so were. And like when
Yeah.
you saw like that build up at the end, towards the end of the first season, when you saw why they were friends and you saw that bond between them, you were just kind of like blown away by like, okay, these two are definitely like best friends, doesn't
Well,
cover it.
when Severide is so upset that he wants Shay to come home after the accident, I think that's really when it hit me, like how truly close they are. Because he was being a bit of a jerk to Gabby during that whole thing, but he was upset, and you understood that because it's like Shay almost died.
He's just one of those people that, like, when he gets upset, he like punches walls and people and
Right.
stuff. He's
Well,
a
then
yeller.
also that made me think of in season 1, those moments with Gabby reminded me like when Shay gets real deep and down and dark in like season 2, and Severide like begs Gabby to go and find her.
Oh, yeah.
Like that reminded me of that moment. Those two things relate to me. And so like it's in those moments where it's like you really see like Severide absolutely needed Shay, especially early on.
Oh yeah, I think that without her, things would have been very, very different for him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think that even though Stella didn't follow closely behind Shay leaving or anything, I definitely think that when she came there, I see a lot of Shay in her.
Oh yeah.
And I think that that's like that's part of where that connection between the two of them came from, even before they got romantic. They had a very good friendship.
Yeah.
And, you know, a very good back and forth. And I think that, you know, Stella is different though. And I think that where that love developed between them, like, I think that's probably part of why I love the relationship between the two of them so much.
Stella and Shay are very similar because Stella's, again, not afraid to call people out.
Yep.
And she's also very loyal. Like, once she's your friend, you're not getting rid of her. That's it.
Yeah.
You know?
She will cross the line for you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And those are things that Shay was exactly like that.
I miss her so much.
Yeah.
I know. And that was the hardest thing is like the show does such a good job like with making you love the characters. Like you feel this connection with them. And then unfortunately in the way that they do with most of their show is they either kill the person off or they make you hate them. Like it's never just okay, see you with the exception of Peter, one of the few exceptions, Peter Mills, of like, okay, but bye, we'll see you, maybe see you later.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe someday you'll come back.
Maybe someday we'll see you again.
That was like the only good ending that I can remember.
Well, Gabby, except you did kind of hate Gabby, but they gave her a chance to come back at the beginning of season 7 and kind of fix that.
I mean, that's where it's the standard of what they've loved to do is either kill them,
or make you so frustrated with them, that you
like
don't
Borelli.
really care that much that they're leaving.
Oh, Borelli.
And I hate that.
Borelli.
The whole Christine had talked about the Borelli thing too, and like
and
how
Chili.
Yeah, but wasn't there?
It's kind of different to me. I kind of hated her.
Oh no, I hated her
right, but wasn't there? I remember you being really upset about Borelli, but I don't remember what you said.
I was because I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what I said, but I guess like for me personally, like I get what they're trying to do with these characters, and they're trying to piss you off because you're leaving, but I guess I favorite certain actors is what it is maybe, or just like how they portray their characters so much that I don't even care like how bad they portray them at the end, that it just makes me just be like.
Well, I think with Jimmy though, even though they tried to make you hate him, you kind of got it because he lost his brother. It was a horrible incident where he lost his brother. I mean, like.
Yeah, I definitely didn't hate him when he left.
No, it's more like sad. It was like you could see him spiraling, but there was nothing anybody could do to stop it.
Yeah, and it was the same with Chili too. Like they had a similar situation.
Yeah, and the thing with Chili, I wish they would have clued us in onto why Chili was spiraling earlier than they did. Because it was really hating her. Like, why are you this way? And then you find out later, and you're like, oh,
I get it, but like they could have that's fine if the others didn't know, but they could have clued the viewers in on what that was about.
Yeah,
but I mean, or was that their intention?
Maybe
for us to hate Chili.
Either way, they're not good at it, cluing us in.
The thing is, I wouldn't be like a character leaving is gonna suck no matter what you do. Why do you feel like you have to make me hate them? Like, it was hard enough that Gabby was leaving. Please don't kill her. Like the character development while you do it. Like you left it open ended. You knew she was gonna come back and visit at some point.
I think in that case, though, they had to, because she was married to Casey. I think it was like they were trying to think of ways to dissolve
to make
that
the
marriage.
Divorce reasonable.
Yeah, so they had to do something. And you don't, since Casey's going to remain on the show, you
Yeah.
don't want people to hate
You don't
him
want to
too
hate
much.
him. Okay, yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
I mean, but not that I think it was a good decision. I'm just saying, I'm thinking that was their logic there, was that like they had to find a way to break the marriage up
To make it make sense for her to leave and not.
and for him to stay.
Mhm.
Yeah. But see, they tried to kind of make up for that when she came back in the first episode of season 7 and gave them a moment. But it still didn't feel like enough of a moment
Right.
because it just kind of ended. They like hugged, and then you're like, "Is that it?"
That was
They're
weird.
just gonna hug, and that's okay. So I think that is why episode 9, even though Gabby coming back just stirs up a bunch of fandom stuff that I'd rather not deal with. I do think they needed that. I mean, they needed Gabby to come back and
Mhm.
have a little more closure than what they had in episode 1 of season 7, because there wasn't hardly any.
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah, they do tend to make you hate them or at least be relieved that they're gone.
And like you didn't expect it because like season 1, like Kim had said, like you didn't really feel that way with Mills. Like you were just kind of sad that he was going.
Well, he left
got
in
it.
season 3.
Was it 3?
Yeah.
What happened at the end?
Down the line.
Wow.
Yeah, like he was around for 3 seasons.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he left in episode
So much
20?
happened in 1 that like I lost track.
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, because he makes Squad
Like
in season 2.
like you're in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Pete's story in season 1 ends with him not making Squad. Like he works his
Right.
butt off to
Oh,
make Squad,
yeah.
and then he doesn't make Squad.
Then he
and
contemplates joining PD.
the
though.
PD.
Like,
he goes to he
in
goes
Tokyo.
to
That's
the police
right.
academy.
Oh
and,
yeah,
like,
okay.
yeah.
Yep.
that was weird.
Wow,
And
yeah.
that's
nothing
like
ever
one
came of
giant
that.
mind mess.
Like nothing ever came of that. I don't even know, but he
Yeah,
did
so
go.
yeah. So you think like, oh, maybe he's gonna go join Chicago PD then, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's just then it kind of goes nowhere. And like,
No,
no,
and then he makes Squad in season 2.
Right.
Mhm.
That's
And then
that's when I
in
throw in.
season 3 he gets taken off Squad because of his
Maybe I was
injury.
just thinking of the relationship with him and Gabby being like the be all
probably
and
like
all.
that was a big part of his storyline in season
Yeah.
1. Not
Everything just
really
blurs.
clarified.
Well,
Yeah, it
Pete's
was-
storyline in season 1 was Gabby, Squad, and then the
His
stuff with
father.
his dad and Bowden.
Yeah.
That was his season 1 story right there. And poor guy, like at the end of season 1, he doesn't make Squad. He doesn't have Gabby.
He has
And
nothing.
he has nothing. Poor guy. I mean, everybody was basically sort of in that same.
Even rewatching though, and like even though I understood why, like I understood, especially after the end, and you understand all of his mom's reasons for disliking him being on fire, she still really bothered me.
She bothered me too. Like, let your son
Even
live
like
his
I
life.
tried, I'm like, okay, but like these are her reasons, and her reasons make sense, and that's her kid. It's still, I just couldn't excuse the way she
I'm
was.
with you on that. Because it was the way she went about it. It wasn't like asking him. It was like
manipulative
demanding.
behavior.
Yes.
Like, well,
Like, when
your
he was-
family, like,
when
let
he
me
finds
guilt you
that-
about it,
Oh,
and then
like
let me manipulate you that the family
Well,
restaurant needs you, and like, it was just
but-
not.
Also, where he finds that girl on the train tracks, like she was run over by the train, and like
Yeah, ugh,
young girl.
ugh, yeah,
she
gruesome.
took advantage of that and was like, this job turned your father into a block of ice, and I don't want to see that happen to you, so your time there is done. Like, really, a moment
like,
where he's like
you
really
can't-
down and really like broken,
you
and
can't
she's like
control
using
him.
that.
He's an adult.
And then she went to Bowden and she
can't-
was like, I'm telling you, he's done. And Bowden was
You
like, I'm
can't
going to hear that from him.
You can't tell your kid
Yeah.
that it's their career choice or their family.
Right.
Well, he's an
Like,
adult. Like,
he is an adult, and I understand that obviously he has a very close bond with his mom working in the restaurant with her, and obviously being the man of the house when his father passed away. Like, I get all of that, but like, you cannot use manipulation. His dream. That was his dream.
Yeah.
That's why when he does eventually leave in season 3, it's very difficult to believe why
Yeah.
he's leaving, because that is not his dream. He fought so hard
Fought
against.
so hard. Yeah.
I'm not just going to be a part of this restaurant, but I'm not saying I don't ever want to be a part of
But-
it. It's just not going to be who I am.
At the same time, you also get it though, because he lost his father. He's very
Right.
close with his family. So you can kind of see where it's like, if something were to happen to them when they were in North Carolina and he wasn't there, he would never forgive himself for that. So you can
Okay,
kind
but
of
like go
see that.
to North Carolina and be a firefighter.
Right. That's the thing. Yeah. But him leaving to run a restaurant is what feels
No.
weird. Like
Because
him
like
going
he
with
fought
them doesn't feel
fought
weird.
that. he
No.
fought that, and he finally got her to be okay with it.
Yeah.
No way is he gonna give that up.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
They like
the
to
whole
do that though when people leave. They go back to the roots and then it just doesn't make any sense.
and I mean for me at least, what it always felt like through Pete's entire story on it, he was always trying to find his family. Like he'd had his family like with his mom and his sister, but it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And so then he found a home with the like
51.
81, like Station 51. And so it's her, and then he tried and find that little personal side, like with Gabby, and like so it'd find a little home with Gabby. And so when
Trying
all
to
of this
find who
happens,
he was, kind of.
yeah, and so it's kind of chipped, like in certain points he feels whole, and then it chips away, whole, and then it chips away.
Right.
Well,
And so
like exactly. He even kind of says that in Squad, where like in season 3 when he's like booted off of Squad, he's like, I mean, this is who I am. And people have to remind him all the time, no, this is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you do, but it's not who you are. So he did struggle with that a lot, where it's like something didn't feel complete at every point, no matter what it was. It was like, he's a paramedic, but he wants to be on Squad, was sort of like the last stretch of that journey, where it's like he had to find out how to be himself and not his father, you know? So he had, yeah, you're right, Kim. His journey was very much like he'd get something and he'd feel whole, and then he'd lose something, and then it's like, yes,
and
find
he had
something
to find
else.
something to replace it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just
Poor
like,
Pete.
makes you want to give Peter Mills a hug.
I know, he needs a hug.
He deserved all the hugs.
Charlie Barnett, I
I'll
miss
give
you.
you hugs. I'll give
Mhm.
you hugs forever.
Well, I feel like by the end of the season, like everybody just needs, like besides Herman and Cindy, who very happy have their new baby, like mostly like everybody just like needs like a big old
Everybody
hug.
was in a very
know.
odd place.
Yeah, like Matt just lost Haley, so
Hallie.
he's trying to Haley, sorry,
That's
too
okay.
many H's. Hallie. So like he lost Hallie.
Emotional.
Yeah. Oh. So like lost Hallie. Still, I mean, he cried. Like we saw him
That
cry.
shot
When,
of him at the end in his house, with all like just like looking
Oh.
so haggard and
Just
so
broken.
lost. Just like,
Mhm.
oh,
So that
My
hurts
heart.
there. And like end of the season for Severide, Renee comes back and is like
and pregnant.
and it's just like, oh,
And for
like,
him, that was not a good end to the situation. Like that wasn't something that he like
Yeah.
could see himself
And
being
then-
happy with. So for him, for his case and what he went through, for him that was bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
mhm.
And
Well,
like
and
you
then
know,
Shay, right there next to him, she wants to have a baby, and now Severide's gonna have a baby with this woman. What's that gonna do for her?
But I
Mhm.
loved another thing about Shay, like the way she called her out on that.
Oh yeah, in the next season, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So season 2, and she's like, when did it happen? She's never, like, she calls her out on everything. When's the
She
due
does
date?
the
When's
math.
the time that you, like, she is doing all the math, and
He
she's
does
like,
the math.
Severide, I'm telling you, this is wrong. This is not how it is. And he's just like, no, stop it. Like, he just can't, like, I feel like season 1, you see him leave off like, this is bad. This is not good. And then season 2, he's totally opened up to the idea.
Well, he's trying to embrace it. You know, this is where
Right, like
life's
he's
taking
trying
him,
to,
so
like,
it's like,
I'm going to take this
we're gonna
situation
do it.
and I'm
Well,
going to
yeah.
make the best of it because I'm not going to be my father. Like, he just
Well, yeah,
very, like,
That's exactly it.
That's the
The
same thing. Like
and
even
Shay, and so he finally accepts it. He finally embraces it. He's ready for it. And then Shay's telling him, no, don't. He's just like, no, don't pop this bubble, Shay. Like, I just got it, okay? Like, I can't handle you ruining it.
Mhm.
And, like, she's just trying to be that best friend.
Yeah.
And, like, I would do the same for my best friend, you know, because, man, from season 2 on, she turned into quite the swindler, that Renee.
Yes,
Mhm.
she did.
Wait,
But I
save,
feel-
save that conversation for next episode.
Yeah, no, so but yeah,
We
but
will.
it's like even for like Peter, how he felt like he was still finding him. That's where I felt like with Severide too. For a lot of the first season, is he's kind of had still been. I mean, we really kind of got to see how much he embraced like the firehouse. Like when you kind of realize the relationship with his dad is not
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
at all.
Well, what I did like, season 1 starts out with him and Matt being so like
At odds.
at odds, and it doesn't end that way at all. And it's so just to see that evolution throughout the season, even with all the blow-ups that they have, whether it's about
Mhm.
Heather or whatever, there's still that, like, I was trying to think, during all the Voight stuff, he and Matt and Severide were not on the best terms during all the Voight stuff, and yet
No.
still after Bowden kicks Matt out of the house, like sends him home because he's so worked out over Voight. Severide is mad at Bowden. He's like, why did you send him home?
like
He
one of
needs to
those
be here so that
It's like
we
those
can keep an eye on
situations where
him.
like, hey, only I can be mean to him. When other people are
Exactly.
mean to him, I'm gonna beat them up.
Yes, I love it. And then when he comes back and he goes back in the firehouse, Severide's sitting out there with Squad, and they're all kind of worried. And he's like, no, that's an I'm with the program walk. And I wanted to be like, Severide, how do you know his walks? I don't understand.
They didn't spotlight that relationship as much as I wanted.
Yeah.
In the first season?
In the first season.
Yeah, you have to really wonder, like,
they've
obviously both been a part of that firehouse for a long time. Like, they obviously weren't always that at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Like, where were they before? What was their friendship like before? Did they have a friendship? Did they just not interact? Like, I always had a lot of questions about their history in season 1.
Well, in the beginning of the pilot, I mean, it seems like they did have a friendship.
Like a little bit, but the biggest part was Darden, though. Like, Darden had known Kelly for so long, and it felt like it was just like the inklings of like, obviously Severide and Matt had known each other for a bit, but it wasn't like they had been working together for like a long time. I feel like,
you know how you're friends with somebody because you're friends with someone else? I think that's what it is. Where it's like Darden was the connective tissue between them, so they probably hung out a lot. They probably saw each other a lot because Matt was obviously friends with Darden, and Severide was best friends with Darden, had known him for years. So it's probably one of those things where like your best friend makes a new friend, and then all of a sudden you're all hanging out together, even though you're not really friends with that person.
And then watching Darden's wife be so civil with Matt, so rough with Severide,
Well, and I think that was the hard part too. Is like, Kelly hadn't done anything wrong, but it's because I think Kelly had known Darden for so long.
Well, and you need someone to blame.
Heather, exactly.
And like she didn't want to just blame a whole, firemen everywhere or even that whole department. She just she saw like, well, this never would have happened, and I think that's where you go. This never would have happened if. So her attitude was he never would have been a firefighter if Severide wasn't. So that means it's Severide's fault because if he wasn't, and like you can't. Well, I mean, I think obviously part of her knew you can't do that. Yeah. And like, it's all part of grieving, but like to watch her be okay with Matt and Matt ask her like, how are you doing? And bring the stuff out. And like you see Severide standing there watching, you're just like, oh, well, just twist the knife while you're in there. Why don't you? Like,
she did get better about it with Severide by the time they go to the Academy dinner, but it was still like, there's still a wall there because, and I think it's because, I've done this when I lose people, the person that was the closest to the person you lose, it's hard to see them. It's hard to even if you don't resent them, it's hard to see them without that person. So like, like in Heather's experience, and probably anytime she's seen Severide, he was with Darden. So without Darden, it's like, it just doesn't feel right. And I've had that experience myself, losing various people, where it's like, it's hard to be around somebody that you connect to somebody else that you've lost. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a part of it too, especially later on when she's not as mad at him. She just doesn't talk to him. It's just kind of like, it's too fresh for her to really
like when she doesn't go when she wouldn't go in to get his stuff because it was too hard to go in.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was probably along the same lines. Like it was too hard to go in there when he wasn't there.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Matt hasn't been associated with Darden as long. Yeah, he was his lieutenant, but it's different. Mm-hmm. It's a different relationship. So I feel like that's what it was, but I definitely get watching Kelly, like I said earlier, he was jealous. So a lot of that Heather argument where he was like accusing Matt of sleeping with her came from that, where it's like, why is there's got to be a reason why she's talking to you and not talking to me. And it can't just be that she's mad at me. So it's got to be that he's
and I mean, they built that up with the way you see Severide watching Matt talk to her at the car and bring out the garden stuff to her. But and then like, you don't really think much of it. And then the next time when you realize that she won't talk to Severide when she talks to Matt, and every time that happens, you see him somewhere in the background watching. Yeah. And then you realize, oh, okay, this is what that was building up to.
And it's so sad because
Severide now.
You what?
I feel bad for Severide now.
Well, and it's so sad because right as he and Matt are in like a really good place, that's when he goes to Matt's house and knocks on the door to get his help, and Heather's there, and you're like, why did you pick now?
And also like, but anyone who knows Matt, come on.
Yeah, and that was my other
And
thing
like,
too. You
it's
know
Severide.
Matt better
I
than
swear to
that.
God, though, Severide is the best self-sabotager
He really is.
I've ever
100%.
seen.
For sure.
Like, even anything that he's done with Stella, things that he did with
Yep.
Shay, like, he
Mhm.
is a self-sabotager.
Yep.
Mhm.
He's so much better now. He's a totally different person now, but good Lord.
No, you're
Like,
right.
even the
He's
way
very
he
good at
handled
that.
Heather, like, there were different ways of handling that. And, like, he instead would, like, it almost felt like he was trying to, and I get it, like, he's desperate to have that, because to him, that would be his connection to Darden.
To Darden, yeah,
And,
Mhm.
like, he was kind of, like, forcing that relationship a little bit. It's like, dude,
he was.
you just lost her husband. Yep, she's being a little rough with you right now. Give her some space. Give her some time to process this and do it. The more you keep showing up and
Yeah.
shoving yourself at her, the more she's going to want to punch you in the face.
Yep.
And, like, he was self-sabotaging that whole, like, if he had just backed off and eased away, like, even Matt wasn't, like, in her face about it.
No.
He was very just like, here's his stuff. I don't expect you to come inside. How are you doing? Do you need anything? But, like, it wasn't like, hey, will you talk to me? Hey, will you, like, can we talk about this? Can we talk about Darden? Like, it was just kind of, Matt just let it be.
Yeah.
And Severide was like, talk to me. Be my friend. Like,
He was.
let's talk about Darden. Like, she obviously wasn't ready to talk about him or even close to that capacity. Like, just
No,
back off a little bit. Just
Now I'm just picturing him shouting that in someone's
like,
face.
be my
Talk to
friend.
me. Be my friend.
Yeah, you see him doing that? That's such a Severide thing to do.
Well, I feel like that's what but he's just such a, like, he's an emotional guy. Like, he just doesn't always express it, like, properly. So that's why
Yeah.
I feel like he sleeps with a lot of women, because he won't, like, admit that he wants, like, that he wants to
Oh,
say
right.
those
Like, he
things, but
tries to
won't.
act like he doesn't want that relationship, but
Mhm.
he kind of does.
Mhm.
That's totally Severide.
But then, like, when people say or confront him about his sleeping around or anything, he's just like, well, you know, my dad did it, so. And it's like, no, that doesn't fly.
Yep.
Because you've already stated you don't want to be like him. And then, like, especially when you see his mom coming around and he, like, hates the way that he treated his mom, like, you can't play both sides of that. So you either want a relationship or you don't. But the only person, again, he was self-sabotaging. The only person he was fooling was himself. Like, you can sleep
Well,
with all of Chicago, but
And I think he learned that truly with Anna.
oh god, Anna was so good for him.
That
Yeah.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I really do. I think that's like the big moment where he realized, like,
Well, I mean, and so many
This-
characters have that, like, that one
Yeah.
relationship that, because if he had gotten with Stella at that time, they would have been done and it never would have been, it wouldn't have been fixable.
yeah.
But, like, Anna just kind of changed something within him and forced him to, like, he didn't even realize he was growing up until he had already done it.
Yeah.
Well, it's most of his interactions. I mean, we'll obviously, as we get into more seasons, we'll
Yeah.
get into it. But it's the hard thing for Severide is, I mean, they don't go into much detail on how much loss he's, like, had on the show. So it's,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
understandable. He's still just kind of been this hotshot who's come up the ladder of the firehouse really
Yeah.
quickly. And so it probably, that just
yeah.
fuels him into
Yeah.
probably, honestly, his not great behavior, because he's like, I'm this hotshot here. I'm a hotshot
Yeah.
out in the real world too, so I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And so he's never really been faced with a lot until, like, you know, he loses his friend of apparently since kindergarten, Andy Darden.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of his first bigger losses in his life, and so it's kind of starting to.
And that's a good point, because in season 1, I mean, really, if you think about the journey of season 1, what you learn about him is that he and Darden were friends their whole lives. His dad is not the nicest, most supportive guy, critical of everything, also likes to blow things up. You know, like that's really what you learn about him as far as his background goes.
Right.
So that in and of itself would explain a lot of who Severide is in season 1, because he loses his best friend, who probably was a lot of what kept him sane when he's dealing with his dad and his family and all of that. So, you know, I mean, those episodes with Benny were so revealing for me. Like, when you're watching season 1 and Benny shows up, and Benny is so, like, he really is so negative. Even when he's trying to be supportive, he turns out to be negative about where Severide is with his life and the fire department as it is, and it felt very demeaning to Severide and all the work that he'd done, because he talks about the department not being the same. The department's not as good as it used to be. I have nothing to teach the people in the department now. And Severide's like, I'm in the department now.
Everything's a but with Benny.
This is my house.
Well,
Like, well, you're a lieutenant, but
mhm,
oh well, you did okay with that fire, but
mhm.
like it's always everything's such a backhanded compliment with Benny,
Yep.
and like he's very egotistical, and I mean it comes off very quickly. Like, I mean, he wasn't on screen for 30 seconds, and I was like, yep, well, can't imagine growing up with him. He's the worst.
Yeah.
You know, like, can you imagine what Severide must have gone through with him, like coming home from school, and like his father is very full of himself for being.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're a firefighter, and it's a very honorable profession.
Mhm.
But part of what makes it honorable is like you don't see Bowden walking around bragging about what he's done.
Yep.
He's saved, and like Benny is all about like, well, I saved this person, and I solved this arson all by myself, like, and everything. I imagine that everything Severide would have done growing up would have been, yeah, that's pretty good, but, or like when I was, like, he always brings it back to himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, to me, the best moment that we saw with Benny was with Shay in that episode in the kitchen. Like, before he goes to the firehouse, before any of that, he's just talking to Severide and Shay, and he's asking Shay, like, about herself. Like, did you always know you were gay? Are your parents okay with it? Like, that whole conversation, that's not even a good moment, and that's literally his best moment in his entire first appearance.
I watched that, and I'm like, thinking to myself, man, I wish she would turn around and just punch him.
Yeah. Shay, to her credit, just seems amused by the whole thing. She's
yeah, but like that's how she was, you know, like the whole thing with like them convincing Mills to go ask her out.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was such a jerk move.
You know, and
by
like
the way.
she just gets that look on her face, and she gives that little smirk, you know, like she gives that smirk that says like, I think you're really dumb, but whatever. Like,
but I'm gay.
I forgot by the way that the whole house was in on that. Like,
oh my god,
literally the whole house.
They were giggling like little kids. Like, I'm like, you guys.
They're like, they are little kids. It's great.
They are.
That's true. Like, could you imagine though if like Bowden had been there and saw them do that?
He would have.
He would have been a real dad.
Go back to work.
And then the other thing that I forgot is that Herman ever had a limo business.
Herman's had so many side businesses over the last 8 seasons. I'm gonna go through and make a list of all of them.
Seriously.
In season 1, we had the like water, the energy water.
That's the one I remember the most. Is like the vitamin water, and he has like cases of it in his garage.
Oh yeah.
That, like, I'll never, like, no matter what scams or schemes he comes up with, I'll never forget the vitamin water. And I'm so mad about how many cases he has in his garage.
And then,
like, that was really sad. Like, you watched him, like, lose his house. I never remembered it being that bad.
His house was foreclosed on in the pilot, yes.
And living with her parents, like, I just never remembered it being, it's always just kind of comes off as silly, you know? Like, and you know that they all have second jobs and stuff. Well, like, it's understandable to try to find a little money making on the side with something. Right.
And then you think about this past season when he was so excited that he might be able to help Lily. You know, you like compare like where Herman was to like where he is now, and it's just like, oh, I'm so proud of you.
I loved his, like, they all seem to play up like when they get hurt, when it's not that serious, and I love it. Like when he got hurt and he came to the firehouse and he's like, hey, I got a serious question. And they're like, okay, like he has his cane and something. He's like, you seen any of my kids or my wife around? And they're like, what the fuck, Herman? Like, no. And he's like, okay, sweet, throws the cane. Like,
he's like, I'm healed.
It's a miracle.
No, but the other thing I loved in this season, Herman had so many good lines. Like in the pilot when is it when he's convincing Pete to go talk to Shay? He says something about how my wife won't take her birth control because
the Pope will cry.
Because the Pope said God will cry if she.
He'd come out with it so quickly. Like that was like he said it all in one breath, and like it was a long thing, and I was just like, good God.
Yeah. And I feel like that was like the longest like thoughtful thing like he would say in a very long while. And every time it would be like. Herman would be like a little like side character for a lot of season 1, where it would just be, he'd have a comment here and there, but that would just be like the if you want to understand Herman, like show that clip and like that it's Herman.
Or when he sells the limo to
Yeah.
Bowden and they tear it up and they're like, okay, we're done with the exercise, Herman, you can stop. And he's like,
Nope,
first
just
time
like,
I've had
no.
sex
Keep
in
going.
like 6 months and Cindy's pregnant. You're just like, oh no.
So many kids. He has so many kids.
I love that the way everybody in the everybody just kind of like backs off. Is like, okay, you go ahead, go ahead,
Just
Herman.
get it out, man.
Just go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I love, like, in the relationship that he has with Cindy, like, right off the bat, she's so supportive. Like, how many women would put up with the schemes and the nonsense?
Only Cindy.
She's just like, you know, like,
Yeah.
she's just so, you filled my garage with vitamin water that you're never gonna sell. Like, she's just so, like,
The comment though, where her dad's snowplow was like not in the garage. Like, my dad wants to know when he can put that back in there.
yeah. And he just gives her that look, like, I don't want to talk about it. I love it.
But
And
now-
like, oh, when his little boy didn't want him to leave,
Yes. Oh my goodness.
when he was like using, like, he was a Superman, a superhero, so he was gonna keep it. He was gonna use his powers to keep his dad from leaving. That was so like, oh, such a beautiful. Like, you don't know that Herman has those emotions in him.
Oh my goodness. And then with Molly's. Like, the episodes without Molly's were so weird to
So
me. Like,
weird.
I'm watching season 1, like, what is this bar?
It's such
This
a
is not the
staple
right
that you
bar.
like forget that there was a time when
Where
it
there was no
wasn't
Molly.
there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, they didn't really establish Molly's until like what, half the season.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like there's
Yeah.
all these episodes where they go to this like random bar and you're like,
Yeah.
You're like,
"What
God,
is
this bar
this?
sucks.
I know.
This is weird. It's so dark and there's no twinkle lights."
It's
Mhm.
and even the later seasons when they start going other places, like even in the other shows, and I'm like, why aren't you?
Why are they here?
Like,
Right.
go to Molly.
Or what
like,
episode-
that's the bar.
What about the business there? You guys are like lacking their business.
There's one episode where Severide and Casey later on go out on a bar crawl and they go to this like sports bar or something and you're like, what is this place?
Mm-mm.
Don't go here. What are
That's
you
the thing
doing?
that you guys do. Like half your house owns this damn bar. Stay there.
Right. Like, what? You can't do that. Does Herman know you're here?
Right? I was thinking that, like, you guys.
I love the ongoing jokes about like half
I know
off
you guys
this or
know.
like 30% off a drink. Like,
Yeah.
like he can never just like
That's probably
give
why-
them a free beer or like when he catches Stella doing it, he's like, that's gonna come off your pay.
That's
Or,
probably
oh,
why
in
they
season
started
one-
making Molly's because they can't get free drinks. So they
Yeah.
go to other places where they can get.
Right?
In season
Yeah,
1, they
Herman.
put the ladies' night banner outside the bar.
Mhm.
And Gabby's like, this seems a little desperate. Like, because it's like ladies' night every night or something like that. It's
Something like that, yeah.
that's a little much.
She's like, isn't this supposed to be like one night a week?
And that's the other thing. So the season ends with the sports bar starting construction, like the
Mm.
big chain
Yeah.
sports bar. Remember?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Themed
That's
at
how it
King
ends
Day?
for like them. Yeah. So there's like construction that's happening, and they're all excited because they're like, oh, it'll be apartments or condos or
Yeah.
And then it's
something. And then it's like this
sports
big
bar.
chain game day sports bar or whatever.
Which then you want to give, like, Herman finally found something that he like you love, and then it's
But
like.
did
it's
he
so
ever
fun.
get rid of the vitamin water in his garage? That's what I need to know.
Garage,
No.
right? It wasn't his.
No,
garage.
but didn't
It was
No,
his
it was in
dad's-
his. It was in his. Well,
father-in-law's
it wasn't.
garage.
It was in their garage, and then it was in the in-laws' garage.
No, I
Yeah,
remember there being a
didn't-
storyline where he was trying to get a lieutenant. Like he was trying
No,
to.
that was later
Yeah.
on. That was during
Yeah,
Molly.
no,
too.
this vitamin water is like like a thing that like
Yeah, it
you
carries
bring
on.
it up
It
Whatever.
like
carries on.
several times.
There was no in season
I give up.
3. In season
Yeah.
3, they try to do a food truck version of Molly's,
I
and
remember
there's a lieutenant. There's like that's holding it up because they need
Yeah.
the permits, and he's holding it up because he
Oh.
bought like a huge amount of that energy water.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but I
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
but if
I
I
love
remember-
it. I love it.
But
Shit.
didn't Otis make a call like as Herman's lawyer?
Yes. In
And that's how
season
they
one-
got rid of the vitamin
That's
water.
how they got rid of it. Yeah, he was told it was non-refundable, and
Yeah.
Otis was like, Psh, "Non-refundable. Nothing's
No.
non-refundable."
I love
So
Otis.
he bullshits being a lawyer like to this company and gets them to refund the entire order.
Mhm.
I love
He's
though
great.
Herman's always like, man, like they said this and they really got me, and like at first it's like, okay, like you got conned, but after like the 15th time, don't you think that you should stop listening to these things? Like he just falls for it every time. Like,
Mhm.
okay, even Stella with the ice.
Yes.
Oh,
Stella
yeah.
with the ice.
Like it did not take her that much to convince Herman, and she bullshitted like, oh, it keeps it colder, and like, oh, it does this and it does that.
She
And so
even
he's
had
like, okay,
Severide helping her bullshit. Like, how much extra would you pay for this?
Well, he looks
artisan
he's like 10 cents, and she's like a quarter, and Herman's like, a quarter, really? I'm like, no, Herman, don't do it. Come on, Stella. That's just mean. It's just mean.
Or,
At this
like,
point, after
even
so
to
many
get-
times, it's just
like-
not nice.
Or even to get Stella to work at the bar, Stella and Gabby did that whole elaborate like bar games thing.
Yeah.
Love that episode. Wait,
Yep.
save it for later.
I know.
Okay,
They're
sorry,
terrible.
sorry.
I'm going to the other seasons. Save it for
I'm sorry.
episodes.
Poor Herman.
No, but I mean, I still think what does that tell you though? Like they did such a good job with this first season though that it kind of just like wraps you up and it comforts you and but it gives you like an eye into this world of like there's always been like murder shows, like crime shows, but there really was never much of like a firehouse show. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but it
I think there is now, but I
But
definitely think
not
fire led the way.
Before then there was like Emergency, which they definitely make references to.
And like there was
with everything
there was like
and
Rescue Me, but that wasn't really like
Yeah.
they were
it
wasn't the same. Like it wasn't the same focus. Like it was very much a focus on their lives outside of the firehouse, whereas this is like
I think
on the job.
Emergency was in like the 70s or something. I can't remember.
Something like that.
Yeah, and it was about paramedics and firefighters. So like that's like the last time that there was ever like a big show about it that was actually legitimately about that.
What they do.
I mean, there's a lot of police procedurals for sure. But
Yeah, and I mean
medical shows.
I love them. I watch a lot of them, but it's definitely nice to like this. Definitely, I believe paves the way for like Station 19,
911,
and 911, and like I love that. I love 911, and I love that fire inspired. Like, oh, hey, let's show the first responder side of it, and like. You know, that Chicago had this whole universe. Like, okay, here's a show where we focus on firemen, but we're also doing a cop procedural, but we're also doing a hospital. And then they added in Justice, and it would have been great, except that you can't ask me to stay up until midnight.
Well, and you can't air 4 shows in a row on a network television anyway.
It's too much.
Yeah. Now that you can't because you're getting in late night.
I get it.
It was a great attempt.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with the show.
Yeah. I get that because like with the Arrowverse, it's like they have to split it up into like 2 nights,
multiple nights,
then,
and it's just
too much. Yeah, it's just too much.
And like they, that's why Arrow's done. Like they know that it was getting to be a lot, but like then they're adding the new Lois and Clark show.
They're adding way more. Now I'm just like
it's a lot. Like, and I mean, I was really into the Arrowverse.
Stargirl.
Yeah, and I was really into it. But
is that part of it?
I think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be because they're going to put it on the CW, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be like a Black Lightning kind of deal where
like a
technically
like
a
there
universe,
but not there,
but not like another world.
But like I got to the point like I was into all of them, and I kind of got to the point where the crossovers it was too much.
I don't watch any of them anymore, so
I'm done with them now, especially with Arrow being over. But like when it got to when you had 4 of them crossing over. Even 2 nights, it was a lot. And like the fact that I had lost track of like Supergirl and stuff, I think, and like then you don't really know what's going on, and like you don't really want to go back. Like, okay, you have this big cross, like they would advertise like a month in advance. You don't really want to go back and try to play catch up before it shows. So I think the 3 is perfect.
Well, and the good thing about Chicago's crossovers is that usually they don't get into the personal a whole lot. In those
it's all just one thing that unites them all.
Especially this past year with the infection. I mean, they did a little bit on fire because they had Joe and Chloe, but that's not something that you need all this background for. You just need to know that they broke up. I mean, pretty much.
But I mean, I still
that's another example why they shouldn't throw personal storylines in those crossovers
because they don't get the attention they deserve.
They don't get the attention they deserve. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, another episode.
No, you're fine. But I mean, that's an example because Chicago with those crossovers, they generally don't. It's like there's a something that has to be solved, and it goes from one to the other to the other.
Right. Generally, I definitely forgot how Chicago Fire, the first season was basically like just one epic Fire PD crossover.
It really was.
Like it should have been called Fire and PD.
How do you call that? Chicago's emergency whatever.
Chicago's emergency services.
Yeah. So,
But like,
I
I
mean-
mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just like I had totally forgot how the first season was so ingrained. And then really I blame Christine for showing me that Scott Eastwood was in it.
Scott Eastwood. Oh yeah,
I totally forgot, right? I'm living in blissful unawareness,
Yeah.
completely forgetting. Like, I'm sure that when I watched it, I probably thought nothing of it. And then when he wasn't in the first episode of PD, you think he was just an extra at that time. And she's like, no. He's supposed to be in the whole thing. And I'm like, well,
Yeah. Well,
great.
he was in the first episode he was in was a fire episode where like a building had collapsed.
Yes.
And like he and his partner were there, and then he came back for the actual backdoor
Yeah.
pilot.
Yeah.
But then he wasn't in
He
PD
wasn't
at all.
in PD at all. No, he was just in those two.
And like, I totally forgot. I just assumed, like, because before PD got really ingrained, you had the first season of Fire when the cops would come in. You had cops, like even the cops at the scene of Justin's accident. You didn't know any of them, and we didn't see them again. So you don't think anything of it. She's got to tell me all about how Scott East was supposed to be in it, so I can get all mad about it. I'm like, I love him.
Sorry.
I was really mad.
It's not my fault that they fucking didn't go with him. I would have loved him on PD.
That would have been so awesome.
Amazing, but then there would be too many star players that it would just be too
Yeah, no, that would have been a lot.
Well, and at the time, that was before he'd booked all these movies.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sure what happened between them developing PD and the actual start of PD, he probably booked a whole ton of stuff.
Yeah.
That's when he got all the offers and stuff,
Before
yeah.
Before we go, I just want to touch base on that because that actually kind of makes me realize something. So what if I think from what I was reading as far as casting goes, it didn't seem like Hank and Antonio were really going to be the main focus for PD until later on. Because of all the casting changes, that's what it seemed like reading it. So it might have been.
Which is funny because the first season definitely made that a huge plot.
But then it could have been part of the. I think they were meant to do it as an integrated like Fire storyline. It wasn't really branch out.
It wasn't supposed to be the focus of PD.
I feel like
happened. Like there's it didn't work out with the casting, so it might have been just the whole like.
Let's go with it.
Instead.
I feel like the first half of the season, I definitely agree with that, where it's like, because that's why they went so far with Voight. I feel like that would explain that. Because they weren't planning on using him in PD. But I feel like the back half, by the time we get to the stuff with Hallie, that's firmly in place.
Yeah.
Which is probably why he got better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really.
So early on, that initial run, that makes sense because they wouldn't have gone that far with Voight if that was going to be the focus later on. Yeah.
I think about that now. It's like, oh, that might be a reason.
Yeah.
Well, they probably. It was like Chicago. I mean, because they don't write the full season like right out the gate, so they probably saw the ratings that from some of that storyline were like, oh, maybe we got something here. And obviously with Dick Wolf, my background in criminal shows.
I do love him. Like I complain about some things that he does, but he's pretty incredible, honestly.
He's amazing as Hank Voight. Like it's probably reasons why it's just like, oh, he clicks so bad. Like it's probably just like this could be the focus. And
I've watched so many shows and movies in my lifetime. There has never been a character that impacts me and questions my judgment constantly the way that Hank Voight does.
Me too. Me too.
See, I can think of one. Lionel Luthor on Smallville was that way for me.
There were times I questioned him, but like with Hank, it's just like a constant inner battle.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that was the right decision, so maybe he's not that bad. But he did this, and that was really bad. I don't know if I can forgive that. And then, when his own people question him, but then other members of his team, they support him and defend him, and you're just like, oh my god, I don't know whose side to be on. Like, where do I stand? And like, you feel like a hypocrite because one episode you're like, I hate him, he's the worst, I wouldn't care if he walked off and never came back. And then the next episode you're like, oh man, the way he defended his team, I love him. And you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, you just feel like you're in two different directions all the time.
Right. And that's why I bring up, because that's how I used to feel about Lionel Luthor. Feel like it's this ambiguous, like, I can't call you bad, but I can't call you good. And I don't hate you all the time, but I hate you most of the time. And then sometimes you do things that I'm like, man, I'm glad you did that. And other times you did things I'm like, can you not do that ever again?
Can you not do that?
So it's like, I mean, really, that's the way it is with both of those characters for me, with Hank and him. So like, Hank, I'm not going to say I like him because I don't like him and I probably never will. But at certain points, I understand him.
I usually don't. It's Christine that makes me understand him.
Like I said, it's certain points, not all the time.
Like he'll do something and I'll text her and then she just has a way. I don't know.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Christine's a little dark.
She just does it in such a way that she's just like, well, like if he hadn't done this, and like she goes through that. She's really good at the what if game, is what it is.
So are you. You do that to me all the damn time. You do that to me all the time. Wait, when we start talking about PD, I swear to God, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna go back to this, and you did that all the time with me.
I did.
You did.
Then I learned it from you.
Oh.
Because like I'd be like, oh, I hate Voight. Like, I'm so glad you're watching PD so I can talk to somebody about how terrible he is. And then tomorrow, how much I love what he did. And she'll be like, well, this happened because this is what he dealt with. And I'm just like, I didn't come here looking for rationality.
That was me. This is bullshit. That was me with like at the beginning with like Haley Upton. You did the same exact shit to me. So I guess you did learn.
Because I learned from you.
Well, whatever. At the end of the day, you just end up loving both.
I appreciate the insight that you gave me into Voight, because if you hadn't, I probably really wouldn't like him very much.
You're welcome. Well, that's the thing. It's just like it's like with Kim. Like her and I both started with PD, so we saw a totally different.
Like based off Chicago Fire season 1 and that alone,
I don't remember him.
I don't like Voight.
Yeah. Well, see,
Oh,
if
no.
I remembered.
I don't care what he did towards the end. It was slightly redemption arc-ish. At the end of just Fire season 1, I do not like or support him.
I just blame my memory. I blame my memory.
And they turned around and expected me to watch a show that he was leading.
I get it. I told you, I get it. Like if I remember
like
next that I watched
next September, like 4 months from now, when you watch Fire season 2, get ready for PD season 1, and then you see Hank Voight headlining it. I'm not ready to watch that. Sure not.
It's fine.
And then you see, and then you see the cuties like Bessie and good old Ruzek.
Oh, Ruzek.
Good old
he
Patrick.
was like such a baby in season 1, which we'll talk about.
It's the
next
hair.
time. I don't want to get too much into that.
No.
I'm not gonna have another episode if we still keep talking.
Before we go to, I also want to talk about November 11th.
Yes.
Okay, go
You're
ahead.
so
Okay,
lucky.
Real quick.
Like,
I gotta go. Real quick.
I'm so freaking happy because that's 9 days before my birthday, and I was really hoping to have new TV before my birthday.
Then?
I was gonna be sad.
Hell yeah.
So I made an announcement that I have like how many episodes left to do.
It was a lot. It was like 75 episodes
You can do it.
I already shaved off a lot. So I'm on my way. Even though I know exactly like what happened in each season that I've missed, but still
it's different. It's
when you're actually watching it.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just like, oh, so that's how it happened. But
It'll be pretty. We're very lucky that it's only a couple months behind.
Thank God.
Seriously.
Like, actually, that was a blessing for me because I was just like, yeah, I have more time to binge.
I gotta catch up on meds, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, see, there you go. I'm almost done. I'm almost there. It feels like I'm not, but I'm there. Like, I keep going. I just can't stop. So it's just like,
they're adding Med to IMDb TV on September 1st.
It's fine. I got all the seasons already.
Yeah.
I don't have them all.
I ended up buying.
I'm gonna have to watch it.
No, I mean, I'm still personally mad that Peacock did not have this figured out until people started yelling at them.
I was so mad that day. I was like,
I was mad.
I don't care how people. I support Peacock TV, but I don't care how people try to spin it. We were totally misled about that.
They lied to me.
100%.
I don't care what anyone says. We were misled about that.
Yeah.
They lied to me. I was so mad. Remember that, Sarah? I was just like,
and then
she was ripping, and I was like, okay, well, it's got to be, because she got it early because she had Xfinity.
Yeah.
And so she had messaged me, and she was like, it's not on. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe with it being early, it doesn't have all the content. She's like, no, bullshit. Being early means I get all the content first.
Well, and even like all the articles they said is like all of Chicago. And
I firmly believe, like, people were coming
that
back
they
and being
were
like, oh, well, in
it's
this
all
article, there was an asterisk or this. I firmly believe that they added those later because I would have seen that
Didn't they-
beforehand. We were misled.
To
Didn't they
this
come out
day,
and
it's
say-
not up yet. To
Well-
this day, it's not there yet.
Didn't they come out and say that they're going to add him in January?
They were said
Something
it's
like
yeah,
that. But they came out and they said the contracts with other streaming services.
Because of
And
IMDb
I
TV.
understand that. And I would have understood that if
But they
you
didn't
said
make
it
it
to
seem like
begin
that.
with, but you
Yeah.
they
didn't.
didn't
Yeah.
until
You said all episodes. You said how many episodes were going to be there, and you didn't give a time frame. You implied that it was going to be when it launched, and their attitude was, "Well, you misread." And people defending them are like, "Well, you
Well, no.
misread." No. I read what they implied.
well, and then
No,
the
but then
Jade
they
Peacock
also-
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and they also
Sorry.
tweeted it out that day. They're like, Peacock's out, watch it now. And I'm like,
Yeah, and
what?
then the
Watch
top
the
comment,
season?
and then the top comment on every single Chicago of the Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD like Facebook accounts, top comments were, "What? Where are the other seasons on Peacock?
That's it.
Where is it?
That
Where
was
is it?"
And their excuse was,
Yeah.
"Well, there are episodes on Peacock. We didn't say all of them at this time."
Oh,
No,
all of
you just
Chicago was
implied it.
every show.
Yeah,
That's
that's what
all
it
of
means.
Chicago was
That's what it
all the
means to
shows.
me. And like, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going crazy. Like, people are like Christine and I had tweeted something and people were responding. We're like, okay, like maybe we're going crazy. But then, like Tim said, we're going to those Twitter accounts and we're seeing those top comments. Obviously, if the whole group of people got the same consensus, you misled people.
Yep.
Mhm.
Oh well.
That's all I have to say about people.
Also,
Whatever,
the
I ended
Twitter
up buying them, so shit.
the Twitter accounts never merged.
No,
Ooh, I don't know if that was because they were like, oh shit, people got mad. Or if they just decided it wasn't, but like people had a reaction
mocked
and it
them.
wasn't good.
people mocked it because it was like, well, that's what people enjoyed on the Chicago Wednesdays was the interaction from the different accounts with one another. So
Yeah.
they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're gonna merge with all into
Not
Chicago
everybody
Fire."
watches
It
every
didn't-
show.
well, what
They
got
just
me
wanna-
was you'd have someone comment like, "Aw," like they weren't like mad about it, but they're like, "Oh, like PD follows me, but Fire doesn't," and they responded, "Well, they'll still follow you." Well, yeah, but the account will be inactive, so what the hell's the point? Like, what kind of consolation is that? Oh, it'll still follow you, and no one will be on it. It'll be completely inactive, but it'll still follow you. Oh, thank you.
But it was also like everybody, when you really looked into it, there was no way for them to use One Chicago TV or NBC One Chicago or One Chicago. Those were all taken. So it's like, you're
I don't
just
know
gonna
who
be
thought it was a
Chicago
good idea,
Fire?
I'll message those people and be like, can I kick you off?
but I hope that they realize their mistake rather quickly.
It's just really funny. And there was like the individual accounts have tweeted since, and there's one person that keeps replying like, we're gonna merge.
I love it.
I hear that every day. I'm like, why is it not merged yet?
I
'Cause
know.
it was supposed to happen like a month ago,
One
right?
person,
Yeah.
and that one person uses that J gif, like where he's in the background looking real confused, like.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, it was
I
supposed
know.
to happen like the week, like it was a Friday. They
A
like a
week,
Thursday,
yeah.
Friday they announced it, and then like following week we're merging together. It's
Yeah.
been a month and a half.
They
Like,
Yeah,
initially
it's
said-
been a while.
They initially said 48 hours,
yeah.
Okay.
and then it never happened after 48 hours, and it still
Yeah.
hasn't happened. So
So I
Well,
don't
and I
think
saw
we're
you
getting
post
it.
something the other day that was the third image.
yeah,
Third. What was that?
they did like the announcement for November 11th, you know,
Uh-huh.
and the
I
first
missed that whole
graphic,
thing.
the first graphic was long, and it had a picture of just Severide and Bowden, April and Ethan, and then like the season 4 cast of PD or season 5
Season
cast of
6.
PD with Antonio in the middle,
Oh no.
Season 6.
and then they
Alvin wasn't even there anymore.
oh, that's right, no Alvin.
Yeah.
And then they
yeah.
redid it, and it was square, but all the same pictures, and you
Oh
could
my
see Matt
God.
now with. And then they did it, but it had the same PD picture. They didn't change the PD picture. Then they did it again, and this time they changed the PD picture.
Oh my God. All I saw was the third one, and I'm like, I missed some good
Well,
something.
The third one had like a little bit of Rojas's hair and the back of Upton's head, and then
Oh my
like, other
God.
than- but the first two pictures were like a cast picture with Antonio. And you're like.
People must have been like, is he coming back?
They were freaking out. Everybody was like, Antonio's coming back. It's like,
Painful.
Oh no.
Painful.
Their poor hearts.
My poor heart.
Oh.
Like that.
was like the
No.
day after John Cena had liked mine and Christine's tweet. So it was like real sad.
I was like, is he coming back?
Oh no!
That's real sad.
I was like,
Oh,
okay, no,
poor
I guess not.
Christine.
I know. So sad.
She's still really upset about that.
I am.
Way to mislead.
It was just really funny, but they did the graphic 3 times.
Ridiculous.
I didn't know that they did the graphic 3 times. That's
3 times.
Yeah, all I saw was
long.
Logan like
Square.
retweeted it, and she was like, mind you, this is the 3rd one, and laughed. And I'm like, I don't know what this is about, but I missed something good.
It was, yeah, they messed up. Whoever made the graphics just like, and it cracks me up though that the only representation Med has is like April and Ethan. Like there are other people on this show.
all right.
Like I get Fire's representation being Bowden, Severide, and
Casey.
Casey, I get that, but like it's not even like Dr. Charles or like Halstead
Or
it's
Maggie.
or Maggie.
Or Maggie.
Colin Ethan.
I love Maggie.
Oh, man.
All right, you guys, I gotta go.
I know, I
Okay,
gotta
me
go too.
Probably.
Yeah, I gotta go start dinner.
Last call.
Oh, I'm already
Yeah.
done. What the hell?
We're done. We shut it down again. It's all
I'm
done.
getting kicked out.
All right, guys. Next month it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Next month.
PD season 1, Fire season 2.
Woo!
My favorite. Okay.